Hails and well met, and welcome to my dankest dungeon. I'm your host, Mally Nim, and today within these dank walls I am joined by three fellow ttrpg enthusiasts for a series we like to call Discussion in Dungeon, a podcast where we talk about our love for ttrpgs, experiences, systems, and more, with the most excellent ambiance by Sirenscape. Shout out to Sirenscape. And my dungeon and our characters' art created by Eldridge Oblivion. Shout out to Eldridge Oblivion. Now, let me turn it over to my co-hosts to introduce themselves, what they do, and where to find them, starting with you, Rainer.
Hello! I'm Sexy Rain, I'm a gaming gamer. I started playing TTRPGs in 2019 when I was 18, but I have a lifetime experience in world-building character creation. My favorite system as of now is Shadow the Weird Wizard, but I regularly play in a heavily homebrewed D&D 5e and other systems of my home group as a player and a DM. I'm the least experienced DM of the group, but I'm always trying to learn. You can find me if you know where to look.
I'm Ruby, the Lazy Goblin, Hero Forge artist and hobby game developer. I do have some experience in TTRPGs for a few years now, and my system of the moment is also Shadow of the Weird Wizard. I'm a DM and a player. I do enjoy other systems as well, as long as it's a good group, and you can find me on Twitch or on Blue Sky.
Hello, I am Eldridge Oblivion. I am a fantasy and horror artist as well as a world building and character creator enthusiast. I started playing and running around 10 years ago. Among my favorite TTRPGs that included Vampire the Masquerade and, fairly recently and unsurprisingly, Shadow of the Weird Wizard, but I have dipped my toes into many others over the years. You can find me on Twitch, Blue Sky, and on YouTube under the same name.
And I'm Mally Nim. I've been running and playing over a decade now. My favorite TTRPGs are the Shadow series, Shadow of the Demon Lord and Shadow of the Weird Wizard. But as long as I'm in a good group, I'll play anything. You can find me here, right now, on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Now, let's get this discussion in dungeon underway with the subject of today's episode, Shadow of the Weird Wizard. A system we all love and wish to spread the good word about. We'll discuss the system, ancestries, progression, magic, and more. We've also created our OCs in the system and we'll discuss their journeys through the levels. And stay tuned. Later in the episode, we will be joined by a very special guest, Robert J. Schwalb, the creator of Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Okay, let us begin with the topic. Where we give a rundown of the system itself. Shadow of the Weird Wizard is a fantasy role-playing game in which you and your friends assume the roles of characters who explore the borderlands and make them safe for the refugees escaping the doom that has befallen the old country. Unsafe are these lands. The Weird Wizard released monsters to roam the countryside. Cruel fairies haunt the shadows. Undead drag themselves free from their tombs, and ancient evils stir once more. If the displaced people would rebuild their lives, they need heroes to protect them. That's the blurb from the book, but in my words, Shadow the Weird Wizard is a D20 fantasy RPG created by one of the D&D 5e designers. Gotta mention Dungeons & Dragons, right? You can find Rob's name in all three books in the credits, the Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master Guide. It has a cool progression system, fun and flavorful spells, and a quick and easy initiative system. It uses a similar advantage-disadvantage system to 5e, but it's called Boons and Banes, and it adds or subtracts a d6 to your d20 roll. In fact, the only dice the system uses are d20s and d6s.
Gotta love that this system you can break absolutely everything, but it's too funny for the DM to be mad about it.
Absolutely busted system, which just like ignores the rules put in place of other TTRPGs to stop you from breaking the game.
In fact, there's some cool spells, some that I wish to discuss later, that encourage breaking the game.
I once made a character who can summon up to, I think, like 30 or something little guys.
That sounds like a you problem, having to manage absolutely every single little guy.
Yeah, you can make a crazy necromancer with the system, for example.
That is something that I find that a lot of systems lack in that sense. Just a proper working necromancer or summoner. And this system does it very well, as Ruby has mentioned.
Yeah, you can make like really cool summons.
Yeah, like most other systems, if you have a conjurer, they can conjure like one bloke up at a time, or have a spell that conjures 4 little blokes. But in this system, you can just, as long as you are able to cast it and they last long enough, you can have as many blokes up as you want.
Yeah, you have around 200 pages of like character creation, like spells and ancestry and classes. Like this system has like such a unique class system.
And one thing to talk about, it goes to level 10. You know, there are rules to go higher than 10, but I love that it's nice and contained in a 10 quote-unquote quest structure where after every quest you level up. Of course, you can play it however you want. You can do it as fast as you want or as slow as you want. Kind of like sex, cut that. But
I thought you wanted to be family friendly.
not this channel, no.
Oh.
But yeah, it's a lot easier to finish a campaign with that kind of structure. I love that. And like Ruby was mentioning, the character options and how multi-classing is baked into the system with no prerequisites.
I think it's one of the most powerful aspects of Shadow the Weird Wizard, because I am no calculator. Math is not my forte, but it almost feels like there's infinite combinations as to what you can get as a character, and it gives a lot of possibilities to create the craziest characters that you can come up with. And also, if you're thinking about something, probably the game has it.
You can even make a wizard with a gun and call him Gandalf, and then when he's out of spells, he will not be out of shells. I'm sorry for this.
Nice.
Only possible in Shadow the Weird Wizard. Try it out today.
Is there anything else you want to add, Raina?
I'm adding actually the combinations of their paths together.
And as you level up, every level you get something cool from your paths, from your novice path, expert path, master path. Every level you get 1 or 2 or more cool talents. Very flavorful, and as always, you can re-flavor for your specifications. An example of mine is I have a character that uses technomancy, but I reflavored it with the help of Ruba inspiration to be more bioengineering with living flesh over a metal endoskeleton. Yeah, I love it. I love the system, love the flavors, the options, and the options to reflavor the options.
I did exactly the same for a character that I'm playing in the same game, where I was looking through the options, because originally for that campaign we were going to use D&D 5th edition, and I was going to use a homebrew class that I was working on, and with Ruby's permission, I asked if I could play that homebrew class that I made. I got the yes, and then when we switched to Weird Wizard, what I did was just looking through the options, I could flavor as this and that, and I found that the class that I currently play sort of has a lot of the things that I wrote down for that class that I created. And a lot of the spells and the tradition that I chose are very, very reminiscent of all the abilities that I could have. So that's something that I really, really like also about the Shadow of the Weird Wizard. If you were having the mindset from a different system, it is very likely that you can recreate it in Shadow of the Weird Wizard with the high amount of options that you have.
I would even say it is probably easier to make something in Weird Wizard that you have in mind, because the system is very unrestrictive. Like, you can make really, really powerful characters, or you can make very low power characters if you want. The options are endless.
Yeah, and like if you look at all the combinations of just the paths, that is, if you just use the basic Novice Path, Expert Path, and Master Path, you got 20,328 combinations of that. But if you include all the Ancestry-based paths, that is 177,870 possible combinations. That doesn't include what spell traditions you use with your characters as well.
Jesus.
Math. It exists. You can use it to play ttrpgs.
That's what it's all about.
There is a lot to discuss about this system. We could stay on this topic forever, but let's move on and actually dissect individual topics about the system. Next up, we're going to talk about title drop.
Goblins!
Now, the core book only has humans to choose from because Schwalb wanted to highlight the struggles of humanity trying to survive within the borderlands, but there is a supplement called Weird Ancestries that adds 30 different ancestry options to the game, and we wish to highlight a few of them. How about you start us off, Rainer, highlighting one of the options you chose?
Okay, well, the two ancestries I'll be talking about is the Clockwork and the Spriggan, and I'll start off with the Clockwork. Clockworks are just the best because robots are so awesome. Robots can be flavored in any way, theming a robot around any concept. My character for the Shadow of the Weird Wizard I made was Minotaur, a clockwork themed around Minotaurs. He was originally written for Demon Lord, which had a slightly more confined idea behind what a clockwork is, but when we moved over to Weird Wizard, I believe it allowed me to open up the flavor I could use for his origins. Lore as written, the clockworks were created by the titular Weird Wizard to be their servant. They were possibly made from the souls of people taken by the Weird Wizard. But this, as far as I've read, at least in Weird Ancestries, they don't go too much into it. They were created each with a specific function and role to fulfill for the Weird Wizard and in their robot society, but you could easily do their origins any way that you want. So, Clockworks get a +3 to their natural defense and a +8. They have a speed of 4, but they don't have a swimming speed, so they will sink. They are immune to sleep, poison, deprivation, exposure, infection, and suffocation. They have the mechanical being feature, so when they're injured, you become slowed until you are no longer injured. To heal damage or regain health from rest, you must expend a set of spare parts. When you become incapacitated, you count as a magical object and lose no health at the end of each round. You remain an object until destroyed by harm, at which point your soul departs the body and prevents you from being restored to life by any means short of divine intervention. However, a creature can use an action to stabilize you by turning a key. You heal damage and become a creature again at the end of the round, rather than healing damage immediately. So, this is I think pretty interesting because Normally, when you go down, when you go unconscious, you take damage at the end of your turn, and then you roll luck to see if you get up or not. So there's a potential that if nobody heals you and you are not lucky, you'll just keep taking damage until eventually you lose all your health and die. While a clockwork, I think they don't actually have that chance of like just getting up, but there's like no chance of them just slowly dying if nobody's able to help them. And then the next feature they get, my favorite feature, is grind the gears. At the start of your turn, if you like to confuse, control, stun, and conscious afflictions, this trait increases the number of actions you can use on your turn by 1. At the end of the round, make a luck roll. On a failure, you become stunned, and luck ends it. A creature that can reach you can use an action to remove this affliction early by finding a key. Once you use this trait, you lose access to it for 1 minute. So it's that's good because there's no bonus actions or anything. You just have your action and your reaction, and having basically a second action to and it's a full action, so you can do a whole ass spell or some ability feature that you have, or you can just make a second attack. But that's like a good way to just get a second attack very early on, like start with it basically. And if you were to take this Ancestry as your Novice Path, you eventually unlock the Clockwork upgrade. Just lets you sort of specialize your Clockwork into like a damage dealer, a spellcaster, and whatnot. You also get additional damage when you grind the gear, and you have the ability to self-repair. And then eventually you get an advanced version of the Clockwork upgrades, giving you a few different kinds of features. And that is the Clockwork in a nutshell.
Goblins! That's it. The system has goblins. And of course I chose goblins. There's a very funny thing that I noticed while reading up on the lore of the goblins. Like, when you imagine gods, demons, fairies, devils, angels, everything is real in Weird Wizard. However, one little thing about goblin lore tells us that evolution is also a thing. And this is what it says. Back when mortals were first crawling down from the trees and figuring out things like foraging and hunting and making fire, one fairy saw the potential in them and realized that they would become a dire threat to the immortals if allowed to develop any further. So yeah, evolution is a thing in the system. I love it. Now, some fairy didn't like that and gathered others to go against the humans, and that fairy became the first goblin king. So basically, goblins are just fairies who are against mortals, humans, whatever. Now, the next part of the lore says a society of the wicked. There's the potential for good and bad in just about everyone, to be clear, but when sifting through goblins is difficult to find examples of virtue, kindness, or empathy. If they had these traits, they wouldn't be goblins in the first place. Exceptions exist, but goblins have few redeeming qualities. Such fucking slander, excuse my French. But like, come on, we goblins aren't that bad. Now, there's a little bit more lore, of course, where goblins come from in the official setting. For example, the City of Goblins. Most goblins live in Goblin City, which is such a very unique and original name. I love it. The city is like a maze, bizarre-looking buildings, mostly abandoned or home to squatters. I have no real opinion on that, but like, I think it's very heavily inspired on, what was the movie again? Labyrinth?
Yes.
With the David Bowie, I think.
Yes.
There you go. Now, the book also says that adventurers are very few because no goblin would think of doing anything with mortals. But honestly, a player can find a reason anyhow why a goblin would join a group of adventurers. Yeah, personally, I'm not a very big fan of the official lore, but I think it's one of these prime examples of taking these as inspiration. Like, if you don't want to use that kind of lore, don't use it. Make up your own lore, you know? Because the book also states that you can change anything you don't like. Now, let's talk about goblin traits. I think they did like a dirty number on the goblins because they are not very powerful. I would have made them stronger. They get the additional descriptor of a fairy. And one thing they are doing well in this system is that their speed is 6, which is pretty fast. And they also get the slippery trait, which means when you disengage from an enemy, they don't get a reaction attack. They are immune to infection.
Real quick. And when Ruby says disengage, she doesn't mean use an action or anything. When you move away, period, no attack of opportunity.
There you go. Exactly. They also get dark vision and keen vision, which is like very good. But also they get sunlight weakness, which basically, like, if they start a turn in direct sunlight, they are weakened, which is very bad, actually. Maybe you want to explain what weakened means?
Weaken means you make strength and agility rolls with 1 bane, and you grant 1 boon on rolls against your strength and agility. In addition, your speed is halved, and you cannot benefit from increases to speed. Which, yeah, that sucks for goblins, but, I mean, I feel weakened every time I go out into the rays of the sun myself.
Lies and slander, I tell you. Anyway, there's of course the goblin class, because you don't have to pick fighter, rogue, mage, or priest. You can also play a goblin. And they are pretty... They're not the strongest, let's say that. They get a cool feature called Goblin Boons. Basically, you get a pool of boons that you can use anywhere, which is pretty cool. And you get Underhanded Strike. When a creature within your reach is harmed, you can use a reaction to attack the harmed creature. Though, that's a pretty weak feature because reactions are very, very useful in the system, and you can use any kind of reaction in this, so I don't think it's very strong. Also, goblins get very few health. They start out with 12 health, and they only get +2 in their goblin levels. So I think the goblins overall, they come out like a little bit weaker, actually.
I mean, depending on how you build your goblin, I think Underhanded Strike's pretty cool. You attack, the fighter attacks, and then you attack again. You get 2 attacks in a round, so that's not too bad.
When compared to like a demigod, I would say
well,
they
come on.
Come out on the weaker end.
But hey,
Are you comparing a goblin to a demigod, the scion of gods, to
Yes.
a little guy?
Yes.
But I love the flavor of it. Underhanded Strike, you know, the creature next to you gets attacked by the fighter, and you're like, oh, cool, opportunity. Shank, shank, shank.
You know, that's what I noticed about both goblins, which I'm going to talk about later, is they are very flavorful. It's more a flavor-based class, I think. Like, you know, if you want some fun flavor, the goblin class is definitely for you. But if you want to play something strong, then play a demigod.
Of course. For my part, I had to pick the most self-indulgent ancestors for myself, the Cambion and the Damper. I'm a simple man. You give me a humanoid with the best monstrous attributes and a half vampire, and I'm the happiest eldritch abomination alive. I've always been a fan of the Outcasts, not only because I've enjoyed several media pieces depicting similar or the same concepts, but also because I resonate with some aspects of them as a queer person. Funnily enough, while I've played quote-unquote the Cambion before, I've never played a vampire, at least as a player. So that's on my bucket list one day, I hope. But I'm going to start with the Cambion. One thing I like the approach the book takes on Cambions. Instead of being half devil, plain and simple, they were originally a civilization called the Azakai, who committed great offenses against the gods. Their cities were destroyed and they were transformed into what appears to be a devil. A different story coming from the Church of the High One is that they were created by an evil god, the Azakai later fallen into ruin by the hand of the High One. That honestly sounds like religious propaganda to me, but maybe it's just me. The reason every Cambion can trace their heritage all the way back to the Azakai is because no matter with who, so long as one of the parents is a Cambion, the resulting child will always be as well. And of course the story and looks makes others distrust them because we cannot have a world full of humans without fantasy racism. I think my favorite aspect of the lore that ties very well into the Corset origins is that nearly all of them experience nightmares seemingly depicting the fall of the Azakai civilization and the wrath of the gods. At least that's how I interpret the small snippet dedicated to these dreams, which I'm going to read now. Dark dreams of the Cambions. Nearly all Cambions experience dreams of darkness and dread when they sleep. Many report seeing the fall of their ancestors' civilization, witnessing angels of divine fire, cutting down all in their reach. The sky is opening to release a flood of caustic rains. The burden of these dreams sometimes makes them cagey and unpredictable, which I think it's a very cool snippet and something that can be incredibly flavorful to add to your backstory should you wish to, because it's a little snippet in the book itself. Traits, let's go with traits. They are size 1, they have a speed of 5, so that is very average. As they sense their senses, they get keen vision. As bonus language is archaic, which after reading the lore it makes a lot of sense since their origins go all the way back to this ancient civilization. They are immune to exposure, which, if I remember correctly, it might be something about going out and about in the cold of night or like the cold of winter and stuff, because another sleeping in the lore says that they are very, very warm, almost burning to the touch, so it makes a lot of sense. And then of course they have fire resistance, which means that they take half damage from fire, and should they catch fire, they can make a luck roll, and on a success the affliction ends, which is a very nice advantage. And then there, as every other ancestry in the Weird Ancestors book, they get their own Novice Path, and their particular one focuses a lot on their fiery origins, giving Cambions a lot of abilities related to fire, including the choice of 2 traditions and a few spells, which is quite neat. But I think that one of the ones that I like the most is called Blazing Recovery, which is magical. You can use an action to heal half of your damage total and become engulfed in flames for 1 minute, or until you are doused in water. The flames harm neither you or anything you wear or carry, and they make you immune to damage from cold and fire. During this blaze, any creature within 1 yard of you attacking you successfully with a weapon or unarmed attack takes 1d6 damage from the flames if the result was less than 20. The damage increases to 3d6 at 5 level. Once you use this talent, you lose access to it until after you've rested, which is pretty cool. Their Novice Path essentially is like a mixture of spellcaster and a warrior, which is really cool, and and as opposed to goblins mentioned earlier, sounds actually very powerful, as you can see here on the screen.
Can I say something?
Of course. I mean,
Yes, Gambians are even better than goblins, that's what you can say.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I think almost every ancestry is better than goblins, like from a technical standpoint.
That's so goblin core. Just like Gale Fairies and Blow Fairies as an entire ancestry.
you feel that way with that kind of attitude, Ruby, but you don't know the inner power of the goblin, and that's the ability to change whatever the fuck you want about it.
Exactly.
Justice for Goblins 2025. Something I forgot to mention. I'm usually very picky when it comes to certain ancestries designs. And I feel like with Gambians, they hit the sweet spot I like to see. Even the character art for this particular ancestry has everything I like to see in a half-devil kind of creature. Horns, pointy ears, claws, a tail, and non-human legs. I totally am not a monster fucker. I'm not going to cut that. Anyway, you can continue.
What are you gonna do to me?
So, with my selections, I went very spiritual. I chose the Deva and the Tatterdemalion. We'll start off with the Deva because we're going in alphabetical order. Devas are basically just humans from the outside. Though at the sage's discretion, you can probably choose another ancestry, but a Deva is a human who found a crystal, and an entity within the crystal, a spirit, made you an offer to be your host for great power with no responsibilities. Though, after you accept this spirit, you become like a dual existence, and you have this luminous symbiote within you now. I just love the flavor of that, especially from a sage's standpoint, also known as Dungeon Master. You can play off of that symbiote and have an NPC while within the character to play and have your own little side stories and quests. So, you're an individual, found a crystal, made a bond with this spirit within, and once you make the bond, the crystal shatters and like a few shards get wedged into your forehead. So people do notice that you're not quite human, or at your sage's discretion, any ancestry. One thing, too, to note, once you make a bond, once you allow this symbiotic spirit within, you do learn a little bit of history. The spirits have their own history. Just like with the Cambians, it seems like the gods are just dicks. There's an ancient civilization known as Orladia, which is basically, I would say, inspired by Atlantis. They were a peoples who tried to reach immortality, and the gods went to war and sank their island. But before they sank, they left their souls within these crystals to hope to find hosts to rebuild. But as plans happen, they went to shit. So the crystals are scattered all across the lands, and according to the lore, a Deva may not ever meet another Deva in their travels. But I digress. You get this crystal, you get this symbiote that lives within you, and as a Deva, you get some pretty cool abilities. You have an additional descriptor of spirit, you learn the bonus language of archaic, and then you get some cool talents like symbiotic aid. Once per combat, basically once per combat. You can use it during combat. Once you use it, you can't use it again for 1 minute. But when you make a roll, you get to add 10 to that roll. An attribute roll, not a damage roll. So a free plus 10 once per combat, basically. You do have the Divine Doom trait, though, where you make luck rolls with 1 Bane. I guess because you're cursed by the gods. Assholes. And then you also have the trait Luminous Symbiote. You can use an action to release the spirit within you into a empty space within reach, and it remains apart from you until it returns to your body, or the spirit itself becomes incapacitated, which ends the separation, regardless of your distance apart. And while you're separated, though, you are weakened, like a goblin in sunlight, but you lose the Divine Doom trait. The symbiote has its own stat block as well, but if you die, the symbiote dies and is lost forever. And in addition, your own soul is destroyed. So a few drawbacks from accepting this symbiotic relationship, but the symbiote has some really cool abilities, and it has defense 20, the symbiote itself, so it's going to be hard to hit. It gets health 10 plus twice your level, so it's really beefy. And it emanates a bright light, immune to a bunch of different conditions. And it has an ability called Radiant Touch, where it can reach out and touch grace and deal some damage against a target. And then also it has a Dazzling Light ability that blinds others. And if you were to take the Deva Paths, it would really increase the strength of your symbiote, give you access to magic, ancient wisdom, which gives you boons on intellect and will rolls, and increases the health of your symbiote. I think that's really cool and flavorful ancestry, and I already have plans to reflavor this ancestry for... Spoiler, not gonna mention, but there are plans.
I freaking love that
You're making me
ancestry.
curious.
And also, both the Cambion and the Diva can shake hands, and just like in any good JRPG, kill the gods, because they have reasons.
Oh yeah, they also have objectives in the book that you can use as written or use for inspiration. Little quests that your Deva wishes to achieve. An example would be find shards and, help your people find host. And as Obi said, one of the objectives would be weaken or defeat agents of the gods.
Or blow up Arasaka Tower.
Yeah. It's awesome, guys. Anyway, I'm also quite fond of Spriggans, mostly because I created a Spriggan homebrew race for my D&D setting. But, I opened up the Ancestries book I was looking through, and I was like, God damn it, they're stealing shit from me again. But in the lore for Weird Wizards, it's a little different. Spriggans are created by Father Tree, sort of like a nature god. When he breathed life, he breathed sentience into his into the trees that he left behind to be protectors of groves and wooded areas, keeping them from dying out. They are like bots and humanoids. At rest, they become indistinguishable from normal trees. Also, changing with the passage of the seasons. They're basically like if you took a tree and you let it walk around. So, their leaves will wilt and go crunchy during autumn, fall off, grow back in spring, all that good stuff. Another thing is, I thought was interesting, is a young Spriggan will, the call for adventure, a young Spriggan will feel inclined, many young Spriggans feel inclined to go on the Grandfather's Walk, which is questing, and ignore their duties as the protector of a wooded area. And surprisingly, in the culture for the Spriggans, nobody's really shunned for fucking off from their duties. It's you gotta do that at some point. So they're not too dissimilar from my own homebrew Spriggan, although mine are more anthropomorphic plants than woody humanoids, although that is just a matter of flavor, and you could easily just do what I did with my Spriggan and have a living pumpkin, a pumpkin-headed fella walking around. They are considered plants for features abilities and spells that affect plants. They get a +1 to the natural defense, and they got a speed of 5. They also have a natural weapon that deal 1d6 damage. They have the plant bond feature. When within 5 yards of any plants, they have an awareness 5 trait.
Awareness. The creature always perceives everything around it within the listed number in yards. This perception ignores the effects of obscurement and lighting.
Yeah, so like if you're just around a plant, and the way it's a word, I'm pretty sure it's just if like a plant is within 5 yards of you, you get complete awareness 5 yards around you. Even if it's like a little seedling that gives you that awareness. They also have the tree form ability, so when on a surface made of earth, they're able to root themselves down and become unmovable. And they appear as a tree twice your normal size. But they also have a downside where they will take double damage from fire, and they have a bane when trying to overcome being on fire. So I did a Spriggan character for one shot that we haven't played yet, but I have a problem where if I can't make a character in any TTRPG and do it all 100% vanilla, because I was like, okay, I got my Spriggan. What if they were just like a tree, one of those trees that got struck by lightning and have like an eternal fire in them? And it doesn't really work well with that last feature, but because the system is like, yeah, man, like do what you want. Actually, you can just do what you want. I just changed it so instead of it being fire, it's to do with cold, because like they get their power from the fire within them. And if you took Spriggan as your novice path, you learn 2 traditions, and you get Plant Strike, which is the ability to restrict a target using nearby plants whenever you attack. And then you eventually get 2 novice spells and Wild Recovery, which is the ability to heal half of your damage total, and then you create viney thorns like on the ground around you, creating difficult terrain that like hurts enemies. And then eventually you get an expert spell and the ability to grow the woods. And so you can create like giant thorny grasping vines in 6 spaces around you, 10 yards around you. And it's sort of like a poison ivy, like creating plants out of the ground that would just like grab whatever creature is there and try and restrain them. So that's pretty cool. I mean, this Ancestry is very like the features they get are very poison ivy coded. So it's if you want to be poison ivy, this is a great race for that as well.
I always love the plant people. They are really cool, and I even like the downside because it makes sense.
Some like D&D is, I think they really don't want to give your ancestries any downsides, but a few. I mean, like I think like actually almost all the races we talked about has some sort of downside to it. Like I think the more powerful something is, the worse the downside is. Like the Clockwork having that feature where you can get an extra action, but you can just turn off if you're unlucky. And then this one has those really cool features with like plants, like having awareness whenever you're around plants, but then you'll catch on fire and die twice as fast.
Or, you could have like something as common as stepping out into the sunlight and basically be incapable of doing anything for the whole fucking adventure if the adventure is like in daylight.
Yeah, except I don't step out into daylight, so that seems something very easy to avoid.
Yeah. Again,
like
sunlight
imagine
weakness
touching
is
grass.
stupid.
Hey,
Sunlight is stupid.
the goblins come out at night.
Well, find a group that only adventures at night then.
Hey, if you have the charisma, you can really convince your group. We are not going out in the day again.
Actually, let me see that. No, actually, goblins have like very bad charisma because their will is 9.
Yeah, except charisma, no, that's a mechanic. When I talk about charisma, I mean your charisma playing your character. Because I don't think when you're with your party and you're like, hey guys, I think we should do this, I don't think your party is going to make you roll to help the decision making. It's really a matter of you being convincing enough. And I think if you're in a good enough group, they will be willing, or they get some interesting situations out with them disagreeing. So you can go back and forth in the campaign to make some interesting situations. I think having heavy flaws that really suck on your character is sometimes fun. Although, if you're someone who exclusively plays goblins, having the same flaw all the time can suck. So I understand that.
Anyway,
Just
should
gotta,
I talk about the next?
just gotta use your Riz, Skibbergif.
Skibbergif.
Exactly.
Well, we have another kind of goblin in the book, and they are called hobgoblins. And many of you probably know them from D&D, like the big ones, the big red ones from Baldur's Gate or something. They are a little bit more muscular and like warrior-likes and whatnot. Forget all about that. Like, the hobgoblins here are nothing like that. The hobgoblins are just as tall as normal goblins here. They are pretty small. They have like half size. And I read up a little bit on the lore, and I fell in love with the hobgoblins of this system because they are extremely charming. The first thing says, even the most tolerant fairies find the idea of willfully living among mortals and offering to help them bizarre. But you see such actions as entirely proper. After all, you live forever, and humans do not. So, hobgoblins, the word hob means house, actually. So, it's like a house goblin or a house fairy. And you know what it reminded me of? Humans having dogs. Dogs live for a very short time, and for dogs, like a human is probably like some kind of like eternal being or something like that. And I find that very a fun thought that a house fairy basically has a human, as something like a pet they care for, A duty to help. The hobgoblins recognize that mortals must die, as it's in their nature to do so. But they also feel great sympathy for their struggles. Humans and other mortal people must endure many hardships. They must toil, fight, and suffer the indignities of aging. So some fairies took upon themselves to give a portion of their lives to helping people they deem worthy. So they won't help just about everybody. Like they pick their humans that maybe are of poor commoners, for example. It's in the book that they wouldn't help out, like, I don't know, some rich asshole or something, like people who are greedy or something. They do not help those. So it's more like the humble people. They help out with chores and all kinds of stuff that you don't want to do, maybe, or that you can't do. What also is in the book is life bonds. Sometimes a hobgoblin becomes attached to a certain mortal. The friendship forms when the mortal is a child. The friendships last the mortal's entire life. When they die, the hobgoblin might become so aggrieved that they just fade away. So they just die from sadness. I don't know, that's very brutal and sad and tragic, but also very, very wholesome. I really like these wholesome goblins.
Very beautiful.
I absolutely love the fairy tale approach to these guys. They are so cute.
They are. I love them.
Rebrand.
Let's talk about their traits.
I was just gonna say, rebrand win, Ruby. Ruby the helpful hobgoblin.
No, see, that's just the weird wizard lore. So let's talk about their traits. They are just as goblins. They are considered a fairy. They have a little bit less speed, of a speed of 5, but they have the silent trait. which means the creature can sneak 1 yard for each yard of movement it expends and roll to sneak with 1 boon. So they are very sneaky. Overall, hobgoblins have lots of talents that lets them sneak around or that can make them invisible, for example. Like fading form, which is their core feature, you can use a reaction when you are harmed to become invisible and immune to damage from ordinary sources for 1 minute. So they just can turn invisible. Like, how cool is that? The effect ends early if you harm a creature. Once you use this trait, you lose access to it for 1 minute. So it's like one battle at a time thing. As like the hobgoblin class, they also have magical mending, meaning they can repair stuff. And they have secret passage, which lets them teleport to a location within 5 yards. They also get a boost in damage as well at level 2 with Unexpected Strike, where they can use an extra 2d6 damage dice. And that's a luck ends feature, actually. So they can use it multiple times in a fight. And yeah, that's basically the hobgoblins. They also get magic in their class, so they will get novice spells and expert spells and 1 tradition, which as a species itself, that's pretty amazing, getting magic.
And to elaborate on luck ends, there are a lot of talents that has that in the description. What that means is at the end of every round, you roll a d20, a flat d20, and if it's 10 or higher, you succeed. So at the end of the round that you use Unexpected Strike, you roll a d20. If you get a 10 or higher, you can use Unexpected Strike again next round. If you get a 9 or lower, it doesn't recover, but you get the ability to roll that luck roll at the end of the next round to try to get it back.
So hobgoblins are basically like cats.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But like helpful cats.
Yeah. So it's like if you're a goblin, then Cat Ruby is a hobgoblin.
Holy shit, you're right.
Wow.
The lore goes deep. But yeah, I absolutely love the take of hobgoblins in Shadow the Weird Wizard, the aspect of the fairy tale one, and the part that is super sad that they just can freaking die of grief from their favorite mortal dying is so sad, but also so cute and so tragic, and I'm a sucker for these things.
Yeah, I think hobgoblins are my new favorites in Shadow of the Weird Wizard.
I love them too. I love the flavor. I love the lore. I would rank them above goblins myself.
Yeah, the same. So they don't have any drawbacks, except for they kind of get the same health. They start with 12 health, and they only get a +2 in their Novice Path. But other than that, they do not have any drawbacks. It's a non-drawback class, basically.
But I think that hobgoblin character would work really well with another player playing as their favorite mortal. So imagine that
absolutely.
their favorite mortal dies at some point in the campaign. Now that would be very spicy, and I fucking love that.
Absolutely. At some point, I want to try that. Like, if I ever get the chance, I want to have a hobgoblin and like the favorite human
in the same party. Yeah, that would be a fun dynamic. I agree. In fact, in my campaign, Unlimited Worlds Unite, there's a hobgoblin NPC that has a life bond with one of the players, and it's a fun dynamic.
Absolutely adorable. You all should watch Unlimited Worlds Unite on Malinem's channel. Like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was listening to Turbo's complaints about how inconvenient Sunlight Weakness is for playing a goblin using the rules of this system, as how they are written and stuff. And I bring you the other one that I have chosen, which is the Damper. So, goblin and a Damper in the same place. Absolutely great. But I'm not gonna go ahead of myself. I'm gonna talk about the lore first. Damper are not so different from any other lore you can find in other media. Someone can either become one by heritage or by having an unfortunate encounter with a vampire, leaving them weakened but alive instead of draining them and feeding them their own blood. They are pale and sickly with red eyes, but if there are periods where they indulge a lot into drinking blood, they can appear healthier and even youthful. Because of their supernatural attributes, their senses are heightened and their body is stronger than the average human, with traits that can get progressively more inhuman if they choose to succumb to their thirst. The one trait that caught my attention is that hair can grow from the palms of their hands, which is hilarious considering where that comes from, at least that's what I interpret, given that generally vampires and sex are tightly related. I don't think I need to mention that, but if you know, you know. Given the needs given by their nature, they live mostly amongst humans. One of the most infamous places is called Sanguine, a city under the capital of the Great Kingdom, where thousands of vampires serve the Queen of Blood and Beauty. Those that end up isolated and feed on burning blood can transform into a creature called Nosferatu. Of course, because most people cannot distinguish a vampire from a vampire, they are often hunted down out of fear. And of course, the sun weakens them, so most of them are nocturnal out of convenience, as I have mentioned before. So yeah, there's nothing more innovative about the vampire, honestly, because what could truly innovate vampires would be how you approach vampires, and if your approach to vampires are the classical romantic vampire, aka of the likes of Dracula or the Anne Rice books, then of course vampires are going to be absolutely the same in that sense, just a little less powerful. But at the very least they can walk in the sun. However, speaking of walking out in the sun, let's read their traits. They are size 1. Their speed is 6, and I think that is great to reflect on their enhanced abilities of their body. They have keen scent as their senses, so they can smell the blood. They are immune to poison, which I think is very flavorful, because after all they are half undead, and therefore their bodies can process those things differently than that of a mortal body. Natural weapons. You can use your teeth as a nimble natural melee weapon to deal 1d6 damage, so you can be a little feral, and I fucking love that. There should be more systems that have this option to let you go a little creature. Drink blood. You can use this trait when you attack with your teeth against a flesh and blood target that is held, stunned, or unconscious, or when you get a critical success against any flesh and blood target. The target loses 1d6 health. Then, for 1 minute, your speed increases by 2 and you make attribute rolls with 1 boon. And of course, goblins and vampires can shake hands on this one. Sunlight weakness. If you start your turn in a space lit by direct sunlight, you become weakened until the start of your next turn. So, yeah, if you have a goblin and a vampire in your party, and therefore probably would be a bigger number than the others, they can be like, hey, can we just go nocturnal and just completely skip the weakness? Yay. And then the Vampire Novice Paths focuses on developing the vampiric traits and bringing them closer to their undead counterparts, and I love that. Giving you things such as becoming a swarm of bats. You can use this talent when you dodge. You, along with everything you wear and carry, turn into a cloud of bats and fly on an empty space within 5 yards. For this movement, you can have the unsubstantial and slippery traits. When you reach your destination, you return to your normal form. Once you use this talent, you lose access to it for 1 minute. And then the other ones, you can become very ugly and scare people. Then if you become a level 2 vampire, you can even have dark vision and you can climb walls, which is really cool. And your natural weapons get the brutal trait, which is one of the strongest ones that you can get on a weapon. And then as a level 5th Dampier, you can use your gaze to enchant people. And you can even just like fucking rip someone's throat. And I think that's really cool. So yeah, as an overview, in the description of the lore, there's one particular title card that's called What's Done in the Shadows. And I like that What We Do in the Shadows reference. It's absolutely fantastic. And well, the takedown, the Dampier is very classy. I like that it's not just inheritance, but one could become a Dampier just by accident. And I have to say that the art is beautiful, perfect for the more romantic take of this ancestry. And I love vampires and I love Dampiers and gender. Fuck, yes.
Can I say something?
Yes, they are so cool, aren't they?
They are very cool, but like, come on, like, the sunlight weakness in Dampiers, like, it makes sense because, like, they are very powerful. Like, you know, you can like, this balances them a little bit, but like overall, they get like more health. They get 14 health and then plus 4 health on their levels. They get bonus damage die, 2 of them. Goblins only get 1, by the way. And they get the fucking brutal trait for the weapons. Like, come on. Like, why do goblins have sunlight weakness?
Ruby, you know what to do. You just have to play a Dampier that is a goblin. That's it. You have the perfect ancestry there. There you go. If you don't like that about goblins, or you do not see the potential that Mali was talking about, then just play a Dampier that is a goblin. Period. That's it. And so the problem solution.
I just like pointing out how weak goblins are in this system.
Ruby is salty, and I do not blame her in the slightest, because I also dislike when an ancestry seems much weaker than others in that sense. So yeah, I completely agree with that, but it's also very funny to poke fun at.
Oh yeah, it's fun to bigger about it.
But I mean, goblin boons. Come on. No other ancestry gets boons like that. Maybe halflings.
Fuck halflings.
You said the H word. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, no problem. No, I don't see any boons for halflings. So look at that. Goblins get the boons.
Well, they have to get something.
I am a firm believer that if you pick the weakest ancestry out of all the ancestries that exist, and you make a lot of combinations, because as we talked about, this system has a lot of combinations, all the numbers that Rainer mentioned and calculated. I think that it really is just all about choosing the things that will enhance the potential of what you have. And that is called min-maxing. Min-maxing works with everything.
I mean, yeah, of course. Like, you can obviously make a very... Usually, I never play of, like, oh, I need to be the strongest character and stuff. Like, that's bullshit. But I still think, like, the goblins got a little bit, like, done dirty. A little bit, at least.
You know, one of the things that I absolutely love about vampires and Dampiers, and I think that this can be a very good lesson on seeing things differently, is that I am aware that they are the losers. And here's the thing. I love losers, and so should you, Ruby. Love the losers as losers. They do not need to not be losers.
No.
And thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
No, you don't realize that. I mean, I chose to be goblin because they are kind of the underdogs and stuff. We are the losers and whatnot usually. Like, we are low XP for like beginner adventurers and shit. But the fact, like, I'm aware of that, so I can bicker around about it.
Yeah, you try to fix that as if you were not complaining before.
Yeah.
Bob. I like that there's What We Do in the Shadows reference in the book, and also that you can just go bat if you choose the Novice Path, and you can get the bat at level 1. It's very funny. I love it.
I do like the little bit of like hair on the hands. Like that's kind of funny, actually.
Like I was like, wait, is this from some sort of like mythology and stuff? And then I remembered the religious propaganda related to having hairy hands, and it's hilarious.
I love the What We Do in the Shadows references as well. Beautiful. Bat.
Bat.
Hairy something hairy hands. My grandma was making fun of me for having hairy arms the other day. Sorry, what are we talking
Yeah.
about?
No, like hair within your like palm of the hand. It's suggested that you are doing like a lot of happy times with yourself.
Well, I think actually all the rubbing would rub all the hair out, so I think it's the smoother your hands are, the more happy time you're doing.
Yeah, but it's the church that said that it doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're in the church, nothing has to make sense.
Exactly.
To be honest, maybe a lot of the things that are written in Weird Ancestries were written by the church, so this might be one of them.
Yeah, only the church would call an ancestry weird.
That's true. There you go. Solved.
Job's done.
Anyway, Mali, how about the last ancestry?
Yeah, tell us about the tatterdemalions.
Another one of my favorite ancestries. So flavorful and so unique. The tatterdemalions. And like I said, I was getting spiritual. Well, you can't get any more spiritual than an actual spirit. Tatterdemalions are piles of clothes with no memory of who they were before they realized their hands were gloves or their torso was a shirt, and under all those clothes there's nothing at all. They do not have their memories, these tatterdemalions, but they do have flashes of something in their mind's eyes. And like during character creation, you choose a profession for your character, what they did before they were adventuring. Tatterdemalions kind of remember their trade, though they do not remember how they came about it. They still have flashes of memory. So tatterdemalions, spirits inhabiting clothes or armor, if you go a more fighter route, but the image of that is so cool. For size, they only stand about 3 feet tall. This animated amalgamation of clothing or armor. But they have no physical appearance within. And what's cool is about like the amnesia aspect, while you gain levels, it implies that you start gaining more knowledge of your past. So that could be a really good story hook for your tatterdemalion character to try to remember themselves, what they were, who they were before they died. So some traits you gain as a tatterdemalion. Of course, your descriptor is spirit. Your size is 1/2 because you're small. Your speed is 5, that's average, but you get really cool descriptors with your speed. You get the silent trait, like the hobgoblin, the slippery trait, like the goblin, but you can also squeeze 1 inch. I mean, if you're possessing armor, you would probably have to doff your armored self to squeeze. Maybe you can flavor it that you bend the metal, but you can squeeze 1 inch as a tatterdemalion, so you can just squeeze under doors or squeeze really tight places. That's really cool. You have a lot of immunities as well. You know, being a spirit, things you can think of, immune to, poison, to sleep, exposure, deprivation, don't need food or drink. You do still need some downtime to rest to regain your abilities, but you don't have to sleep. And another freaking cool trait, you get the true vision trait. So while you can see normally like a human per se, you also see like in the spectral realm. You can see ghosts and spirits like yourself. Things that normally would be hidden are revealed to your mind's eye. But you do have a cloth body, so you do take extra damage from fire. And if you ever become incapacitated, instead of going unconscious, you're stunned instead. And if you are healed while you're stunned, you occupy the closest pile of clothing, which is probably the ones you dropped when you were incapacitated. But if you happen to get knocked out and there's a beautiful dress on the wall, you can go inhabit that dress when you come back to life. Very fun, very fun. And if you happen to choose the Tatterdemalion path, the Novice Path, you would get access to a spectral touch, which deals damage and weakens a target. You gain superior reflexes. I mean, you're a freaking spirit. And then at level 2, you could get some novice spells, as well as a tradition, and you would gain spiritual recovery. While using an action to use spectral touch, you make your agility roll with a boon, and on this success, the target takes 2d6 damage. In addition, you heal half the damage. So not only would you be dealing damage with your spectral touch, but it would also heal you as well. And then there's a really fun ability at 5th level called Hijack Apparel. You can use an action to move from the clothing making up your body to the clothing worn by another. Target one creature within 5 yards that wears clothing of any kind. Make a will roll against the target's agility. On a success, you control the target, which the target can end it with a luck roll at the end of the round. But on a failure, you lose access to the talent for 1 minute. You can use this talent a number of times equal to half your level and regain expended uses after you rest. So, the cool stuff, while you control a target, you occupy its space and move with it when it moves. If the target sustains damage, it takes half of it. Unfortunately, you take the rest, but you use actions normally. However, the target you have controlled can make the use of actions normally available to all creatures, such as attack and defend. So basically, you get your own actions normally, but the target you're controlling can only use actions that they can normally do. But that's pretty cool, just dropping your cloth body and inhabiting someone else's clothes while they're still wearing them. What are your opinions on the Tatterdemalions?
Freaking
They
love them.
are they are so lovely. I have a feeling that they are inspired by the Tsukumogami, which are yokai or obake, aka ghosts from the Japanese mythology, that are essentially just objects that inhabit objects, and they usually come from like abandoned objects and stuff. So it's really neat. I freaking love these guys.
Yeah, like I got some pretty cool Tatterdemalion characters, and I don't know why, but Ruby seems to really hate them. But I think
Oh, shut up
Tatterdemalions-
out of your pants.
No, please elaborate, and please provide with images that we can show right here.
Oh yes, yes. Here's my first character, Chuck. He is a pair of pants. He is an amazing character. I don't know why anyone would have an issue with Chuffed. And here's my other character. He is a glove, and he's also pretty cool and pretty awesome.
I freaking love these characters. They are Amazing. Also, I didn't know that they were the Malians when you showed them, but now it makes a lot of sense. I freaking love that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, imagine, there's how the Malian. It goes, it does its feature to control your clothes, but it just controls your pants. And you just got Tadamali controlling your pants and like forcing you to run where you don't want to run to, or you got Tadamalian controlling your glove, making you slap yourself in the face or drop your weapon or what.
Is that a tatterdemalion in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
See, notice how Ruby has been quiet this whole time.
It's because she's still seething about how weak goblins are. She has to mention goblins every single ancestry.
Yeah, goblins are so weak.
Oh, I don't.
My
no,
pants.
No.
and
I
glove are
just,
so
I just
epic.
hate your fucking pants.
You hate my pants? You'd rather me not have pants? What?
Jesus.
Well, let's show a
I hate you all.
design. Just for Ruby, let's show a design that Ruby loves. This is an NPC from Unlimited Worlds Unite. I told Ruby, I gave her free reign. I was like, make me a Tatterdemalion NPC. And she made this beautiful rendition of this character, and it inspired me so much how I role played them and played them. This character's name is Wisp, and this design is mwah, chef's kiss. Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you, yes. I also did like 2 other tatterdemalions actually. One for Trixie, which you can see here. And one for another campaign or like one shot or something that Maddie wants to do, which you can see here. It's a bunch of armor.
And
They are such lovely characters. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I want to elaborate on the armor too, because I love what this player gave me for this, because like I said, you get your profession right at first level and you kind of remember a bit about your profession as a tatterdemalion, but this player decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool if my tatterdemalion was a thespian and wore this armor on stage and was killed on stage. So when they came back to life inhabiting this armor, they thought they were some sort of great warrior, but they were just an actor the whole time.
That is such a fucking cool concept. And I think that I heard Ruby talk about it before, and I just remembered it, and it's chef kiss.
Yeah, I love the concept too.
And it'll be great for like role play and story opportunities once they start remembering everything and how they actually died. So I look forward to exploring that character for sure. Well, that was fascinating. Love talking about the Ancestries. Let's move on though to the next subject, which is in this segment, I want to discuss the progression system, or paths. In Shadow of the Weird Wizard, your class is known as your path. And throughout your career, you will acquire 3 paths. At first level, you choose a Novice Path. This choice is between Fighter, Mage, Priest, or Rogue. And if you are playing an ancestry from Weird Ancestries, they have their own Novice Path you could choose instead. Then, when you advance to 3rd level, you choose your Expert Path from 42 different options. Finally, at 7th level, you gain your Master Path from 121 different choices. There are no prerequisites to the choices either. What are your thoughts on paths and progression?
I absolutely love that there is no restrictions whatsoever. That you can choose whether to start like as a spellcaster of some sorts, but then move on an expert path to be something that is more combat focused, like more physical instead. And the fact that there's not only that freedom, but also the spells, the traditions, and everything are described in a way that leaves out a lot of room to be creative and do your own thing, even if you are not following the classes as they are described, or the paths more like, as they are described, and you can just do your own thing. It's just, chef kiss.
I really like how many there are. You said it before, like 33 paths for just expert alone or something, and then 100 something for master path. Like, it's crazy how much customizability this game has. And they all come with like their own special flavors and stuff. I like the master path, for example, the Hierophant, where you can just become immortal, or a War Machine, where you can like build some kind of like war machine to aid you in battle and stuff. It's such cool flavors, and they are all very, very powerful. You can really play out power fantasies in this system.
I really like about the path system compared to other systems which have their classes, and like especially say Pathfinder, and I think more D&D 5e, especially D&D 5e, where you have your class and then you have your subclass, and you can multi-class, but when you multi-class, you end up sort of, depending on the way you multi-class, you end up not really getting the best out of all your class, especially if you don't play the max level. Like maybe you end up playing a campaign where you only go to like level 10, you don't get the best potential out of it. But with the system in Shadow of the Weird Wizard, it is built that way. You know, you get your first path, which is basically your first class, and then you get another class as your second path, and then you get another class on top of that. You end up multi-classing in a way, unless you end up taking paths that are basically like meant to be related, you know, like mage, wizard, arch mage. It feels like you're doing like one class level 20 in another system, but it is like a system built around the whole multi-classing thing, and you don't get weaker because you end up playing, you know, like going with a martial type of path for your first path, and then going to a spellcaster, and then going to like a third more sinister thing with your master path. It's built to work around that, and you feel powerful no matter. I mean, I can't think of any bad combinations of paths. You can make any path combination work, while it is very easy to make your entire build suck in another system if you multi-class wrong, or you end up picking the wrong or like bad subclasses.
I agree. I love all the options, all the customization, and of course, traditions, which we will cover later, add even more options and flavor to your choices. Coming from Demon Lord, I know Rob put in a new supplement called Uncanny Arcana that kind of address this, but in Demon Lord, if you wanted to like choose a class that gave you magic as a master path, you kind of missed out on all the high level spells. But not with Weird Wizard. You can be martial from level 1 to 6 and say, hey, I want to dabble in some magic at 7th level, and choose a magic focused path at 7th level. You get those high level badass spells. So you're still just so freaking cool. And I love that. And yes, all the different options, so many flavors to inspire characters. I have so many characters I want to play, but not enough time. And I don't think I will ever get to play them all, but this system just inspires the imagination with the progression. I freaking love it.
It's
Yeah.
freaking amazing, yeah. Another thing that I really like as well, I find that other systems struggle a lot with balancing the martial classes with the magic classes. But in Shadow of the Weird Wizard, I like what it has been done to bypass that. And that is that the martial classes not only get the more HP to be able to withstand more blows if they are on melee, or if they can just absorb more damage and is built into that, but also they also get more extra damage to absolutely everything that they do. And that is such a simple solution, but incredibly effective, I feel. And I really appreciate that because it doesn't make martial classes any less powerful than the magic classes, and you can do a lot of very crazy stuff with magic classes. And that says a lot about the care and love that it has been put to making sure that the players have fun.
One thing I also want to say is I really like how the book is structured in the path. Like, you have, for the expert paths, you have paths of battle, paths of faith, you have paths of power, and you have paths of skill. And then, like, later in the master paths, you have paths of arms, of the gods, of magic, prowess. And I really like how they are, like, in categories, so you can easily find, okay, so I want to play a martial class, so I look up paths of battle, or I want to play something that like is magic, so it would be a path of magic, or I want to be something that is completely out of the box, so it would be like prowess or skill, and I really like that it's like has these little categories within the master and the expert paths.
Yeah, and earlier I was going to say, Melly, you did bring up a good point about how, because of the way that the system works, when you get to Master Path and you want to start taking a caster path, you can start the more powerful spells straight away because you're already at that level. While in another system like D&D, you get to level 17 and you want to multi-class into a mage of some kind, then you just end up with the wimpy level 1 spells, and then you never really end up getting any powerful spells. While switching to a caster later on doesn't weaken the kind of spell options you get. So I think that's cool.
Hell yeah. Well, for this next segment, we have a very special guest. For this segment, we have a very special guest. Hail, Schwalb. Welcome to my dankest dungeon. Please, introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Rob Schwalb. I make really gross things for Shadow of the Demon Lord and Weird Wizard and other games. So glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, welcome in, welcome in.
Welcome in.
Welcome, so glad to have you. Thank you again for joining us. It is an honor to have you. Let's discuss traditions and highlight a few of the cool talents and spells you could acquire from each. Tell us, Rob, what are traditions and how did you come up with the system?
So traditions are bundles of spells that all kind of share a similar theme. So we'd have like pyromancy in Weird Wizard, or fire in Demon Lord, and invocation and ttrpg and so on. And what they basically do is they kind of give you a way to kind of pare down all the spells and restrict your, not restrict, but really just give you a smaller menu of options to choose from when developing your character. The idea about with clumping spells in this way really comes from third edition's, actually second edition's Spheres of Magic, and so that second edition D&D's Spheres of Magic. And I always love the idea of kind of mixing, matching different chunks of spells to kind of develop your character in an interesting way without having to do a lot of mechanical lifting. So traditions seemed like a natural fit for what I wanted to do with Demon Lord, which was keep character development, gameplay simple, and funnel choices into various narrower, smaller buckets rather than having to just sift through, an ocean of spells. So in Demon Lore, traditions function as just packages of spells, so fire, life, nature, and so on. In Weird Wizard, you get talents from your tradition to give the tradition a little bit more weight in the game. A magical talent operates like either a limited use ability or an always-on benefit that modifies your character or lets you do something that nobody else can do. And then it also gives you a selection of spells broken into the 3 tiers of play: novice, expert, and master.
I love all the traditions and the different flavors that come with them and the way they can flavor your character. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think really, it's an extra layer of character customization above and beyond what Ancestry and Paths can do for you. So it gives you another tool in your toolbox for making the character that you want to play distinct and interesting.
Most excellent, most excellent. Well, we're gonna highlight a few of the traditions from Shadow of the Weird Wizard and talk about a few talents and spells that we really love, and would like your feedback on these as well, Rob.
Boy.
Let me start off with the skullduggery tradition. People sometimes forget that with magic, almost anything becomes possible. While a great many spells have big flashy effects, magicians profit from the smaller, subtler forms magic takes. The skullduggery tradition offers solutions to a raft of common challenges spellcasters face on their quest, and when they don't solve the problem, they offer a way out of it. Now, Ruby has described this tradition as the cheat code or glitch tradition. What inspired skullduggery?
I wanted to give rogues and roguelike characters a way to kind of break the game, to bypass certain challenges, and have a toolbox type tradition that gives you a variety of options for doing a variety of things. So it's certainly, like spells like locate traps, for example, is just an easy way to bypass, to speed through what could be a tedious scene, and most of the stuff kind of involves breaking, entering, and thievery, and that is certainly it kind of reflects the rogue inspiration for this tradition. That said, I also think for magicians, I think magicians tend to also fill in that toolboxy kind of range where they can usually have a variety of tricks up their sleeves, and I think skullduggery gives magicians and priests of fetch ways to fool around in illicit ways.
Oh yeah, it's so cool. A really cool talent, especially for a rogue like you mentioned, should you take the magic use talent at 2nd level, is Handy Hole. It's a magical talent that lets you open 2 hand-sized portals, one next to you and the other 10 yards away. So cool for like a quick snatch and grab.
Yeah, that talent has its origins in the Hole of Glory spell from Shadow of the Demon Lord. And I felt like the effect works better as a talent, especially to kind of reflect the nature of the tradition.
Yeah, that's such a cool talent. A couple of spells I wish to highlight. The first, Break On Through. Love the Doors reference. We lovingly refer to this as the wall glitch spell, allowing you to pop through a wall. You do have to perform a ritual, which takes about 10 minutes, so you'll need a lookout, but I can just imagine the ritual is you casting it, you're just running up against the wall and jumping a few times until you clip through it.
There you go, yeah. Yeah, that's cool, yeah. It's another one of those spells that doesn't really fit anywhere else, but it's an effect that I think the game needs. And I love the idea of, as an expert rogue, you're just like, or a sneaky magician, just not messing with going through the door. You're just going to go through the wall because you can, and you should be able to.
Hell yeah, speedrun tactics, I love it. And speaking of breaking the game, have to highlight the master spell that lets you open the console command and type in a few cheat codes. Break the rules, the master spell. For 1 hour, you have access to 10 different cheats. You can only use one of each, but damn are they cool. High on damage, heal all. You rolled a crappy damage roll. Nah, let's make that maximum. Disease, poison, confused. Hell of a night, right? Let's clear that up real quick. Such a cool fucking spell. Tell me about the design of this bad boy, please.
It's another one of those situations where I was thinking about how a character should be able to use magic to completely get their own way. And so when I was thinking of all the ways that I would want to break the game myself and all the annoying things that happen, I wanted ways to shut those annoying things off to really kind of reflect the nature of the tradition, and also just how good you are at navigating the various challenges and perils that the game can throw at you. Yeah, it's a pretty substantial list, and I think that when you're under the effects of spell, it's got to be a lot of fun because you could just get away with murder. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Looking at it again, of course, I make myself wonder, what was I thinking? But then again, it's like, at the master tier, you can cast a spell that does 30d6 damage. Sure, heal all damage, regain all your lost health, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's good. It's fun.
100%. I love it. I love it. Well, that's me and Skullduggery. Let's turn it over to Eldritch Oblivion to talk about their tradition.
So, surprise to no one, I, of course, chose the Eldritch tradition to talk about. So, with great power comes great responsibility, and in this case, I see that you are responsible for the health and well-being of your character if you choose this tradition. Eldritch magic explores the forbidden. It taps into cosmic forces best left undisturbed, calling forth monstrosities from other realities or contorting reality in such a way that it can never be righted. So, it's easy to see where the inspiration comes from, but I would like to know more about it from your perspective, Rob.
The funny thing about the Eldritch tradition, and there's a few other ones that live in the core book, I had originally intended to not put them in the core game and have them show up later, but in an act of being subject to the Eldritch tradition myself, I decided to just throw it all in. There are some dark-themed paths and traditions that do live in this game, despite the fact that I would kind of steer the game towards more family-friendly. This one is an evolution of the Madness tradition from Shadow the Demon Lord, and it certainly speaks to cosmic horror and exploring some of the hinted at aspects of the games, or the games, and I mean that in a plural sense, shared cosmology, that there are things that, like the Ancient Ones and mysterious gods and the creatures that lurk in the dark between the stars, that kind of stuff, that are independent of the Demon Lord and the other deities and other powers in the setting. And so I really wanted to get into, to kind of start revealing some of these cosmic threats, and this tradition would seem like a good way to do it. It was really a way for me to just explore the disturbing and strange in a way that makes your character feel very distinct and also creates some fun effects in the game.
Yeah, that is really great, because I was looking through the talents and through the spells, and I can see how they can be more family friendly in that way. I wanted to, from all the 4 talents, talk about this one because I thought it was flavorful. It's called Disaster's Revelation. If you lack the confused control stun or unconscious afflictions, you can use this talent at the start of your turn. Make an intellect roll. On a success, you experience a Disaster's Revelation. You heal 2d6 damage, and until the end of your next turn, you make attribute rolls with 3 boons. But after you become confused, luck ends. On a failure, you make attribute rolls with 3 banes until the end of your next turn. And I imagine this one myself as having either an amazing or a really bad Eldritch power trip, either way ending in a terrible hangover from seeing what lies beyond. So I would like to know your insight about this one.
Yeah, it's definitely, the talent definitely has your character peering into places you really shouldn't, right? It's like you get to see the underlying truths of reality and how awful that really is, and then be able to navigate your way through it for a moment, but then as the reality of what you just witnessed kind of sinks in, your character is momentarily befuddled you're kind of going insane for a few moments as you're trying to grapple with what you've just learned. And so I like the idea that there's, well, not like the idea, but it's mostly a way for you to just kind of peer beyond what perception normally allows and apprehend opportunities that would not normally be available to you because you're willing to strip mine your brain. So yeah, it definitely embodies everything the Eldritch tradition is really about.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I really, really love that it goes so well with this tradition. And for the spells, I wanted to highlight each end of the spectrum when it comes to Eldritch magic, from the strangest mundane to the horrors from the beyond. Every spell of this tradition has a detrimental consequence for your character, which I really, really, really love. But the one that I wanted to talk about, or the two more like, Betrayal of the Flesh, and this is a novice spell. One of the target's limbs gains a mind of its own and becomes hostile to its owner. At the start of each of the target's turns, it makes a will roll with 1 bane. On a failure, the target's own arm, or a similar limb, deals 1d6 damage to it, and the target becomes weakened until the start of its next turn. The target can overcome this effect and end the spell early with a successful will roll. After you cast the spell, make a will roll. On a failure, you take 1d6 damage. So this one is essentially a slap yourself spell, but I'm very curious about the thought behind this one, because out of all the other spells, this one is really bizarre in a very funny way. So I would like to know more about this one.
I will confess that the spell, the inspiration for the spell comes from Evil Dead 2, when Ash his hand turns against him and he has to cut off his hand, and then that's where he puts a chainsaw attached. So and because Evil Dead, it has so much of that cosmic horror stuff going on in it, I felt like it was just a natural fit for the game. And I think it does give you a little bit of levity for a tradition that is largely upsetting. But I think it also is kind of horrific to see that your body turns against itself, right? I mean, it's funny, but it also it does reinforce this idea that you're really not in control. Nothing you see or perceive is real, and everything is inimical to you, right? So yeah, fun spell.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I absolutely love the Evil Dead reference there. And yeah, I really like the mixture of, like, it can be either really funny or also going into the body horror and losing control of yourself part of the Eldritch concept. I think that's really, really cool. I love that. So the other one that I wanted to talk about is a master spell called Awaken the Dead Dreamer. The ground in the target space fractures as a dead dreamer pulls itself up and free, revealing itself in all its nightmarish glory. Chunks of earth and stone roll from its back to create challenging terrain on the ground within 5 yards of it. The dead dreamer is an enemy to all creatures, is only the sage's control, and remains until incapacitated, at which point it disappears. After you cast the spell, you become stunned, lock ends, and weakened until after you rest. Also, you take 3d6 damage and make a will roll with 3 banes. On a failure, you take an extra 3d6 damage, which is really wild. Picking up the Cthulhu Mini from the GM's shelf and casually placing it on the battlefield spell. That's absolutely fantastic. I freaking love it.
This particular spell, the name comes from, what was it? Oh my gosh. I've drawn a blank, sorry. Anyway, yeah, I wanted the player to have the ability to pull out some cosmic horror and just drop it on the table, as you said. And it is, when I was designing the master spells, I was looking for big, flashy, exciting effects. And I think this one was probably the flashiest. The Dead Dreamer, of course, is a nod to Thomas Ligotti, who wrote Conspiracy Against the Human Race. And so that was my tip of the hat to him for his work inspiring a lot of this tradition, along with Lovecraft and other cosmic horror writers.
That is absolutely fantastic, and I really like how the master levels have incredibly flashy spells, and this one just caught my attention immediately because of having this threat that is both to your enemies and your allies alike. It's fantastic and very flavorful.
Awesome, thank you.
So, Ruby, you go.
Yeah, so I picked War, huh? What it is good for? I will tell you, to kick ass with over-the-top anime moves. It says in the book, the war tradition arose from a demand to even the odds, to give magicians a fighting chance when they find themselves low on spells and in the middle of a battlefield. Yeah, elaborate please, Rob.
The war tradition answers the question about how to play a hybrid spellcaster, right? Somebody who fights with swords and fires and shoots fireballs from their fingertips. And what I wanted to do with the war tradition, and going back to Shadow of the Demon Lord, the battle tradition there, is create a set of spells that specifically interact with the combat system and let you, again, break the rules, because that's really what spells are all about. So I envision a magician that's focused heavily on the war tradition is going to be about on par with a standard warrior who's also focused on just fighty fight stuff. And so they're pretty balanced in that respect, but it does create some interesting opportunities when you hybridize. Either you go into the war tradition by way of the rogue path, or you come into it later through higher tier paths, and it gives you a way to become more versatile than you ordinarily would be. And I think it also just creates a lot of fun effects on the table, a lot of really evocative things that, being able to just bamf across the battlefield like Nightcrawler and attack multiple times, or just guaranteeing yourself a hit, just stuff like that, it just seems like cool magical effects that really reward players who want to invest in this particular way of developing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do remember the battle tradition from the Shadow of the Demon Lord book, which I think I played once. And they also have like some really cool, funny spells. But speaking about like the war tradition, there's like a very handy talent to have, which is Arcane Warrior, which basically what you said is like, I think, giving the caster like an ability to use like ordinary weapons and like use intellect or will for the attribute instead of strength or agility. And it also gives like a bunch of bonus damage and attack boons. So yeah, I guess like if you want to elaborate a little bit on that talent, or if you want to highlight another that you find interesting.
Yeah, it's really, the Arcane Warrior talent is almost, I'm not going to say it's a must-take talent for the tradition, but it's certainly it's a must-take talent if you are a magician going into this path, I think, because it does give you a way to kind of keep pace with other warrior-type characters in the group. However, it also means that if you come into this by way of, like if you start with a warrior and go into this later, it does let you maintain your pace to some extent by building your bonus damage dice supply. I like the idea of kind of cheating by using your intellect and will. It lets those attributes that you focused in on have a little bit more real estate, and you get to use them more broadly than you would otherwise. The other talents are, again, they're going to be they're things that just make you just badass in a fight, right? I mean, like Uncanny Block, you're doing, it's a big, sexy effect that seems like it should be a lot of fun when you're in the thick of it. And the same thing for the other two, Occult Strike and Swift Advance, just let you do things that a normal warrior wouldn't, which kind of reinforces the magic, but without actually making you feel overpowered.
Oh yeah, the war tradition is pretty badass, which we also see like in the spell selection here. I do want to highlight one novice and one master spell. The novice spell is an actual useful true strike. Magic guides your hand to ensure your strike lands true. Roll damage as if you have succeeded with a roll to attack, and the attack deals an extra 1d6 damage. How did you come up with that?
Well, True Strike's name kind of signals the classic 3rd edition D&D spell, True Strike. Rather than do a 2-round setup where you're being punished, where you cast a spell and the next time you make the attack you get a big boost, I just wanted to sidestep that and deliver the effect that I think the player wants, which is I just need to hit this guy. And I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait and lose the opportunity and make this hard to do. And also, because it doesn't actually add to your die roll, you're not going to be triggering critical effects, which is another control that I put on this spell so that you're not just getting an auto crit success. And it does kind of fold in that critical success with the extra damage that you're doing, but doesn't actually fire off anything else that's synced with getting a critical success on a roll to attack.
I really do like your approach of like, I want to do this as a player, so I give the players like the tools so they can do whatever they want. I really like that. And the master spell I want to talk about is Sudden Death Strike. You vanish from your space, appear behind the target, then you say nothing personnel kit, strike it, and then return to the space you left. And then the target takes a bunch of damage. What was the inspiration for that? I mean, we see that in a bunch of anime, I think, but like, did you have any specific inspiration for this?
I didn't really, not on this one. When I build spells and kind of really any talent thing I work in any of these games, I try to visualize what the effect is going to be and then build the rules to create that effect in game. So I just had the thought of like, all right, well, I want to be able to go and take this guy out and get him out of the way, right? And how would I do this? And so I just thought this idea that either you're teleporting or you're moving super fast, and you're moving so fast that no one can really kind of track your movement. And it was a really exciting and beefy effect for this tier. And I mean, it's a one casting thing, and the whole bunch of damage is right. I mean, it's going to take out just about a good chunk of the bad guys. But it's a cool effect that really makes you feel powerful.
Absolutely. It does 15 d6 damage, which is insane for this system. One question that Mally and I have is, can you combine this with the evocation tradition of like, where you don't need an action for spells, or is that generally a no-go to combine the spells?
Let me see. We're looking at evocation. Bear with me as I'm rolling through my PDF.
Yeah. Well, mainly novice evocation, right? Because novice evocation spells require no action. You just have to speak the word.
Right. So I'm trying to see if there was a way that does. Do I let you, if you have the evocation tradition, do I let you cast spells without speaking or using an action? I don't think I do. Just the spells, just the evocation spells themselves, right?
Yes, yeah. Because they don't require an action, so we thought it would be cool to kind of combine these, like the non-action spells with, let's say, Sudden Death Strike.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, you could do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because there's no limit on the number of spells you can cast in a round.
I love that. All right, yeah, that was all for me. How about you, Rainer?
Okay, so I was looking into the technomancy tradition because I'm a big fan of the sort of, is it technology, is it magic, and in this system it's sort of both. And the description is grease and soot, a scattering of tools and sheaves of blueprints. These are the trappings of anyone who studies technomancy. The tradition's spells enable casters construct marvelous devices from junk, scrap, and other bits of detritus. They happen to find them around themselves. The spells transform the wreckage into useful forms. So what was the inspiration behind the technomancy tradition?
The technomancy is another one of those things where I think that it is players want it, and so why withhold it? You know, there's a reason why. Because I mean, going from my experience and working on Dungeons and Dragons, there was always kind of an interest in like the artificer class and things along those lines. And people love to mix. People love steampunk as well, and so having that as an option to kind of develop a character around that seemed like a no-brainer to me. And I think that, you know, without having technomancy in the game doesn't mean that it's a steampunk game, but it does mean that if you're a steampunk aficionado, you've got the mechanics to play that character out. And also there's, I think, technology as something that can be affected by magic is just inherently interesting to me. I just find it really exciting to be able to quickly assemble the tools you need and use mechanics to overcome challenges and boost your character and feel like you're doing fun things in the game. There was a picture in a second edition book, I think it was a Gnomes and Halfling book, and there was some black and white line art drawing. Maybe it was a gnome who was just covered in tools, and that has stuck with me for all the years since. And I always wanted to build characters around that idea, and that really is what the technomancy kind of grows out of that.
Yeah, it's so cool. And also I think like the wording on the flavor text sort of opens it up to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sort of steampunk kind of thing, because it's like just taking junk and scrap and bits of like stuff around you. I mean, you could just be making stuff like mud or something, like you have a character who builds things out of mud, and like there's a lot of different ways of flavoring it. My favorite talent that I'll be going into is the Mark IV pistol. Construct a magical pistol. The weapon reloads itself instantly and automatically after each attack you make of it. You roll to attack with the pistol with one boon, and the weapon lacks a misfire trait. If you lose this pistol, you can create another one after you rest, and you can only have one such pistol at a time. What is the inspiration behind this?
It's another I think it's a situation where people want to have guns in their fantasy games, and so I'm giving them permission. Going back when I first debuted Shadow of the Demon Lord at a small convention in Nashville called Geek Media Expo, we had pistols in Demon Lord, but they weren't. They were priced out of range. And one of the players was like, "Hey, can I start with a pistol?" And in my answer to questions like that is always going to be yes. And so I wanted to, and anticipating that would be the case for people coming into Weird Wizard. Let's give them what they want. Let's give the players what they're after, and this is the talent to do it. It does cost you a talent, but I think it's a worthy investment given the fact that pistols do a lot of damage, and this strips out all the annoying bits that kind of you're used to balance firearms in the game. Plus, the Mark IV title is again a tip of the hat to Gamma World. I think there was a Mark V or a Mark IV pistol or something like that in that game. That was always a coveted item in our games.
Damn, nice. I got my character that I play in our student ttrpg. He's a spell fighter, and the spell fighters features that they get 3rd level combines really nicely with the pistol. So I like that combination. And then there's probably like a bunch of other paths that combine nicely with it. For my spells, the first one is an expert spell, but I just thought this one's pretty cool. It is Gizmo, so you construct a quarter-sized device that has a raft of different functions. Choose 2 novice spells from any tradition. The device becomes imbued with these spells and has a full complement of castings for each. While you hold the device, you can cast the spells it contains by expending castings from it. Finally, while you have at least 1 casting left of a spell the device contains, you make attribute rolls with 1 boon. When you expend the last casting from this device, the spell ends early. I really like this spell, especially because it basically gives you access to every novice spell. So what was the idea behind this?
There are 2 things here. One is I was kind of cheating. I had one of the earlier drafts for Gizmo had this huge list of different effects that you could generate and just choose from, and then bind them to your Gizmo. And I felt like that was just an unnecessary complication. So then it became obvious to me at that point that really what I need to do is just use Gizmo as a way to deliver other spells. And because you're getting novice spells, you're not doing major damage with novice spells, and you're going to get fun effects for the more utility aspects that show up in that tier. So, and then also I think that it reinforces the idea that the Technomancer character can construct whatever he or she needs to get through whatever their situation is, and proper planning with the Gizmo spell kind of bears it out. You're going to have extra cards up your sleeve, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just thinking. And also, like, if you do a path, like if you end up doing paths that don't end up giving you many traditions, you only end up with technomancy, then that lets you have access to all of those spells as well, which is nice.
Yep.
And the master spell I'm looking at is super sick, the Radiant Blade. Basically a lightsaber. You construct a sword handle when you attack with it. A 1 yard long bar of light snaps out from the handle's end and remains until you use an action to retract it. The weapon counts as being offhand, deals 4d6 damage, and has the brutal, nimble, and slashing traits, and you roll to attack 1 boon. So, I mean, my first thought is lightsaber. Is that the inspiration?
Absolutely. You know, you run a game for kids, and they're going to say, I want a lightsaber. And so it's going to be one of those things like, well, of course you do. And you know what? You can have one eventually. Even though this is it is a nod towards Star Wars, there is kind of this idea that you've got this cool magical blade that, it also comes from, do you remember the animated show Thundar the Barbarian?
Yes, I have heard of it, but it's been a long time.
So Thundar had this opening bit where some passing comet comes by and rips off the atmosphere and splits the moon in half, and the character has this gold sword handle, and then at a command or whatever, it creates this lightning blade, and so it also kind of plays into that.
Nice. That is everything I got for technomancy.
Wow. That is, I love that. And we've only hit the tip of the iceberg with 4 traditions. There are so many cool traditions in this book. You've got to check out Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Thanks again, Rob, so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Where'd he go? Damn, that was quick. Okay, well, thanks for stopping by, Rob. In Shadow of the Weird Wizard, there is no roll for initiative. The bad guys go first, in any order, and then the player characters take their turn, in any order. There is a reaction you can use to go before the enemies named Take the Initiative, but it does use your reaction for the round. It seems like an easy choice at first, but there are useful reactions any character can take, as well as spells and talents that use reactions too. There is more to discuss than just initiative. So what are your thoughts on combat, and maybe some of your favorite reactions?
The initiative system is a lot of fun. It gives a lot of room to think about your strategy, while if someone has taken the initiative or if the enemies are acting. Even though you are doing nothing, it keeps you active in a way, because anything could happen. You could have a strategy in your mind, but then something goes some way and you might get dealt a very heavy blow. But if you have kept your reaction, you can just use it to dodge. And something that I really like about the dodging reaction is the way that it works. It just hinders your enemy imposing a bane or giving yourself a boon, if I remember correctly. But if you're a rogue, you can get these doubled instead, and imposing either 2 banes or gaining 2 boons to be able to dodge it and avoid a potentially heavy blow. That one I really like. I haven't personally dabbled too much into other reactions because I haven't played much of this system other than with one character and with the character that I am a guest in Unlimited Wars Unite. I haven't had the chance yet. That's one that I really like, the dodge. It's so simple, but at the same time, the way that this system makes it work is very fun, very cool, and makes it worth it to not act in the first place, because it could mean the difference between life and death, and I love that risk.
I personally really, of course, like how engaging this system is in terms of, if you roll for initiative, then you just wait until your round, basically, until you have your turn. But here you can take the turn anytime you want, and that's really cool. So you really have to focus on the fight, and it's engaging and it's fun. And one of my favorite reactions is actually cover ally, even though I haven't used it much yet with my characters, because I'm playing more squishy characters at the moment. But when you have like I don't know, like a big barbarian or something, someone who can really take a lot of damage, then you can use your reaction to save your little wizard friend or something, and then you get targeted yourself with whatever attack, and that's really cool. I like that this is baked in. And yeah, there's so much you can do in the battle, like not only reactions, but also like you can use basically maneuvers, like from a battle master in D&D. Anyone can use maneuvers when they have bonus damage, and they can, for example, in my last session that I ran, someone was actually like doing a push attack or to throw something into the lava that was behind them, and that was really cool to see. Like you can have like any kind of attack replaced by something else, and that's amazing.
Okay, well, my favorite combat feature, and it's one of my favorite combat features in any game with combat, any TTRPG, anything that's not so mechanically locked down, that there's a little bit of theater of mind, and sometimes the mechanics can also help this as well, is shoving. Shoving is my favorite thing to do because it can just end combat really quickly if the person you're shoving is in a inconvenient location. Shoving in Weird Wizard works. To shove a creature away from you, choose one creature whose size is no more than 2 larger. Strength roll against their strength. If you have a shield, roll of 1 boon, and a boon if you and 1 boon if you move 5 yards previously. On success, you push the target a number of yards equal to your strength modifier, minimum of 1. If the target is larger, moves half the distance, minimum 0. Instead, on a 20 plus, the target falls prone. Now, making a target fall prone is pretty good, but pushing an enemy off a cliff and not having them in combat at all is very nice. And if I see an enemy near a cliff and they're within pushing distance, their ass is going over the cliff. I don't give a shit about their loot. I don't care if they have a legendary magic item. I'm pushing them off the cliff. It'll be funny.
Perfect.
Perfect. And other things baked into the system are like combat circumstances, like called shot. You can make called shots to target specific creatures' body parts, surrounded target, basically flanking, built right in. And the best combat circumstances, when you have the high ground and gain a boon to attack someone lower than you.
It's over, Anakin!
You were my brother, Anakin! I love it. I like that the weapons are not just these damage dealing things. They have their own traits that are not just damage types, but they come with their own set of special abilities that you can use whenever certain circumstances are met, or like the nimble passive that lets you use agility in place of strength when attacking. Or I also really like the piercing, which on a critical success the target is weakened until the end of your next turn, which when I see that, I really like the logic behind it, or the ability is what I think is the logic behind it, because a piercing weapon can do a lot of damage, even centered in one point, because if you hit the right point, whatever you're attacking is going to start losing blood. Or if it's like a sentient armor or anything that has a high defense, you can use that to pierce through the weak points. But there are more like that, and they are all a lot of fun. I just freaking love how this system treats weapons and weapon properties.
Agreed.
Absolutely agreed. And once you get behind all of these traits and you know where to look them up and stuff, I still have to look them up, but like it goes faster now, and you can like really make fast use of it once you're used to it. Another thing that I think does the system great is how you use movement in terms of like getting up, for example. Like when you get up, you use 4 points of your movement. And when you, let's say in the middle of the battle, you want to change your weapon, you use, I think it was 2 points of movement to basically change up your weapons. And I think that's really a good solution to, because you don't have like something like bonus actions or anything. You just have movement, you have your action, and you have your reaction. And it makes use of all of these things very, very clever.
Yeah, I like that too, because it reminds me of the original Fallout games where you have your action points, and your action points are used for your movement and the actions that you can take. So using like a little bit of movement to do these little actions reminds me of that.
Oh yeah, I love that too. And also to expand upon, you know, players going in any order, like you were talking about earlier, rolling for initiative. Say the cleric rolls low. Well, shit. Can't buff the party until the end of the round when everybody else is already gone. Nah, screw that. The priest or whatever, if they wish, they can go before their allies and be like, let me go first. Let me cast a buff on you. Or the wizard. Let me take the initiative as my reaction and cast Fireball before the enemies have a chance to spread out. I love that option.
It really gives you more control over what you do, because in systems where the initiative is just fixed, one person goes after another because of what they've rolled, it becomes a problem in the end because of what you said. Cleric usually, for example, likes to go last because, for example, Cleric can heal if someone gets very hurt in the first rounds. Can use a reaction to keep themselves safe if necessary, if they have any features that allow them to do so. And I mean, as base kit of reactions that you can take, you can already have that, but maybe your particular path or paths do have something that help you a little bit extra with that. Like, I don't know, using your reaction to instead be like, no, I'm gonna teleport, fuck you, and and maybe mitigate some of that damage and everything. There is a big realm of possibilities when it comes to how you engage with combat, and having player agency is also very important. And I think it's one of the elements that also makes this system as fun as it is.
Yeah, and if you end up taking the Uncanny Acrobat as your master path, you don't even have to sacrifice your reaction to go first, because they have an ability that if they use a reaction to take the initiative, they just get their reaction back, so they don't have to worry about that if you do that as your path.
That's crazy powerful. Holy shit, I didn't even knew about that.
Yeah, and imagine that with the psychic's ability, Speed of Thought, where they get 5 movement when they take the initiative. So you just end up taking the initiative, getting 5 movement, and then getting your reaction back. Fast as fuck.
And a few of my favorite reactions with some examples. The Mage Implement has like 3 options that you can do to like augment your magic, or basically detect magic, but it also has the Mage Shield, which you can use your reaction when a creature within 10 yards of you targets you with a magic effect. You can roll to resist the effect with a boon, or impose a bane against a roll made against you. In addition, if the magic deals damage, it deals half damage, so even if you get hit, you take half damage. I used that reaction recently in a game Ruby ran, and thanks to that, I did not get hit with the magic because I was able to use my mage implement to shield the spell. So that's really cool. And to expand upon one of the baked-in reactions that Ruby covered earlier, pun intended, cover ally, I mean, that is such a great reaction. It was used quite recently in a game I ran. I targeted a character with a spider bite who was going to get poisoned if they failed the strength roll, but they were next to the tatterdemalion fighter who used their reaction to take the hit instead. And since they are immune to poison, they did not have to worry about the poison. So it was a beautiful use of the cover ally reaction. I loved it.
And speaking about poisoned, we have to say that poisoned in this system is really, really nasty. Like, think of a level 1 group and one of them gets poisoned. That's easily a character death because poison says minus 1d6 health at the end of each round. And we are talking about health. That's basically your max health. We are not talking damage. So basically you can have like 2 rounds if you are like level 1. 2 rounds and you roll high on the damage, and basically your character is dead because it's health and not damage. It's crazy powerful poisoned.
And also, usually it allows a luck roll, so you have to be unlucky as well.
Indeed. And not just that, it also makes the condition so deadly, because one thing to know about this system is that damage and health are 2 separate things. Because damage is what you start counting first when you get hit. And if the damage in the end equals your maximum health, then you fall unconscious, and it's then when you start losing health. So poison straight up damaging health makes it so deadly. And I'm adding this just so you know the how important it is not to get poison in this system.
Especially at low levels.
Well, the system has like much more to offer than what we just discussed. Like, there's so much more afflictions that you can get, so much more weapon traits that you can use, and reactions and everything. So really, like, make a battle of your own with Weird Wizard. It's really great.
I couldn't agree more. That about wraps it up for this segment. For the next segment, we thought it would be fun to create our original characters in the system and progress them to level 10. So, to create Mally Nim, I drew from my original character's lore, as well as some IRL lore, which influenced the Goblin lore. If I were to join an official Weird Wizard campaign with this character, it would make more sense for the campaign to be starting or at level 3 or beyond, because of the way his story begins. For my character, of course I am a goblin, but you see that I am an Earth Goblin. Earth with a U. That is the setting for Shadow of the Demon Lord, and it's in the same cosmology as the Weird Wizard setting. With my sage's permission, I would be replacing the sunlight weakness with the elf trait, Iron Abhorrence. This represents the Demon Lord Goblin's Iron vulnerability, and it replaces one flaw with another. I also love that individual goblins have a distinctive appearance in Demon Lord, a physical trait that sets them apart from each other. And I would represent this with my bulbous red dead eyes. A goblin quote-unquote vocalist in an unsuccessful creature band, as that's where my goblin originated. Next up, Obi.
Hi, hello. So, to make Oblivion, I chose to do quite a lot of flavoring to reflect the abilities I already know they have, but also to draw some inspiration from the system to further flesh them out, given that it leaves a lot of room to make a concept your own. I chose Changeling from the weird Ancestries supplement as their ancestry. Oblivion is canonically a shape-shifting entity that has adopted the looks of a silent elf from my dark fantasy setting, Balea. If compared with an actual silent elf, you'd observe a few traits that make Oblivion quite unsettling. Changelings make perfect copies of who they impersonate, but I find the idea of an imperfect impersonator much more appealing. Is Oblivion impersonating someone who's already existed or exists, or is just the concept as a whole? I leave it up to your imagination. Given that we will focus on other things in the sections that are coming, I will leave some other details for that. So, Ruby, why don't you introduce yours?
Yes. So, when I tried to translate Ruby from D&D into Weird Wizard, I have to say I did not expect how much better I can make her in this system. Because it does require a little bit of reimagining and reflavoring and throw in maybe a little bit of homebrew, but I could not be more happier with this build. So for Ancestry, I translated a little bit of the D&D and like the Pathfinder, the Tailed Goblin into Weird Wizard. So there's like no bullshit sunlight sensitivity, and instead I get a little bonus damage a la Fury of the Small. And of course the slippery trait with 6 movement speed and dark vision. I will say no keen vision here, because that's not a thing in the other systems, so that balances it out maybe a little bit. Rainer, tell us more about your character.
Well, I say originally made from D&D, but originally he was not made to be used in any TTRPG setting. And I sort of had to come up with like a sheet for him in D&D when I started streaming, just like for the fun of it. And I found it difficult back then. I still found it a bit difficult with Weird Wizard, although I feel like what I ended up with fits his flavor a bit more better. Like, it was much more difficult in D&D. But with him, he's a Minotaur, but he's also like a bit of an eldritch creature, some sort of eldritch creature. And in D&D, he was using a homebrew ancestry I made called the Half Flare, which was meant to be a balanced way of playing a character who had gone through either quote-unquote full or partial ceramorphosis. So if you want to play a Mind Flayer or someone with Mind Flayer-like abilities, similar to like if you wanted to be an undead, you would play a reborn as your character. So I had it so he's like a Minotaur who was turned into a Half Flayer, and I sort of took this, and with Shadow Weird Wizard, I ended up picking Woodwoes for his ancestry, because it is technically not a Minotaur. The art for it looks sort of like a Minotaur, and they're huge. So I had to pick that, and it's dude, they're like huge. They're hulking. They got horns. The horns aren't part of the mechanic, but they got horns. And the flavor with Wizard, they are like nature guardians, but my bloke, he's not a nature guardian, he's just a bloke. But one of the things he gets just from his ancestry, he gets a big chunk of health, plus 12 health, speed 5, bonus language, runic, I never find languages that useful in games, besides, like, unless the sage thinks about it. He also gets a great reach, so increases reach by 1. And he gets hulking, so he's huge, dude. So he makes strength rolls of 1 boon and imposes 1 bane on rolls made against his strength. But he's also a bit of an easy target because he's huge, dude. So I think this is the ancestry for huge dudes and dudettes.
Dude.
Dude.
You look huge.
Dude.
Now let's talk about the Novice Paths we chose. I love mages and magic, and I always gravitate to those types of characters when I play. But it wasn't the case when I unknowingly created Nim's OG design. Nim first appeared as a dual-wielding brute in the City of Villains MMO. But for Weird Wizard, I did a little retconning for his Novice Path. And since I was a character doing crimes in the Rogue Isles in the MMO, I thought it would be fitting for Weird Wizard Nim to take the path of the rogue. I started out at level 1, a sneaky little guy who burgles to help fund his band and make ends meet. This leads to level 2 rogue, where I gain magic by burgling a cultist's grimoire that granted access to the shadowmancy tradition. This is represented by the book I now carry. Why shadowmancy? In Shadow of the Demon Lord, followers of Diabolus can choose to learn shadow magic as well as fire and enchantment. And this book was stolen from a Diabolist. And since I can only learn one tradition as a level 2 rogue, shadowmancy is the most appropriate for his endeavors at this point in his career. While he's not into the religious aspect of the book, he is drawn to the dark, edgy side it represents. Alright, Obi, you're next.
Alrighty then. For Oblivion, Mage made the most sense to me. They get 2 traditions at first level, of which I chose Eldritch and Psychomancy. Oblivion's whole deal is being the keeper of the archives, a space that records the history of not just Balea, my setting, but outer worlds as well. It's a double-edged sword kind of place where you can acquire knowledge of all kinds, but upon leaving, there is a high chance you could forget it all. It happened to Oblivion themselves. We can see them in their own clothes when they thought they were just a simple goblin who dabbled in magic. Oblivion doesn't really use their physical body to do any tasks, instead using their mind to do so. This is a bit of a personal one, given that I myself am slow and clumsy in everything I do, but my mind goes miles faster. I projected that into Obi, so they share a part of my struggles. That's where all the telekinesis and other psychic abilities play a role. Not just to help them navigate the world and do their tasks, but also as a defense against any threats or to peek into other worlds without moving away from the archives. And finally, of course, the archives were created by the Unknown, the entity or entities that Oblivion serves, which provided them with an extra set of abilities. The Unknown is an entity of contradictions, with a part of it dedicated to erasure and another to creation. Creation is what gave Oblivion their companion that they call upon, reflavoring both summons you can see on screen as 2 different versions of the same creature. This companion is Nim, not our host Malinim, but a being that chose to sort of look like a dragon to keep Oblivion company in the solitude of the archives. So yeah, that's essentially the gist of it. You can see all the abilities and things that I found that were pretty fitting for Oblivion's character as a whole, and the ones that they would likely have on the first few levels. So, that said, Ruby, what can you tell us about your Novice Path?
For the novice path, I chose priest because priest is basically a very, very great way to make a D&D ranger, which I used to be, or like something of a spellblade type. So I call it just the divine ranger because it combines spells and martial abilities, and you have like lots of healing and stuff. Priest is overall a very, very good class. And my spells for it, my traditions that I chose, is pyromancy and invocation, because I wanted to show the inner spell casting that used to come with the divine soul sorcerer. Healing and fire, but also capable in those close quarters with a good old wooden sword, how I used to have it. This is, of course, a nod into my childhood where I used to go out with my own wooden sword and a good friend, and we would play pretend to be adventurers. At second level, I would learn the burning weapon, which basically is the shillelagh of the system, for me at least, where I get to use my will instead of agility or strength for my weapon attacks. And then some divine aid for some good old healing. And yeah, that was basically my novice path. Anyway, Raina, what's your novice path?
Well, I didn't bring this up with the first part, but it's, I think, more important within context of Novice Path. His background is spelunker because he spelunks into caves, and that's important because his Novice Path is, well, first of all, I felt like none of the 4 Novice Paths that you get normally, the main 4, were fitting. But what they don't tell you is with the Weird Ancestries book, there's actually 35 Novice Paths to choose from. So I ended up using his Ancestries as Novice Path, Woodways. And he is just a big dumb guy who goes spelunking. And he, at this point in his story, I imagine, he has no control over the alien, the eldritch parts of him. So he's just like throwing himself at shit. And with the Woodwoes, they get like a hell of a lot of health, extra health on top of the previous health. They get the Woodwoe recovery, which just lets you heal your damage total once per rest. And then like the rest of his abilities are all just about like slamming. Like you got the brutal strikes, overpowering strike, improved brutal strike, and wrath of the Woodwoes, which is all about just basically like with brutal strikes. When you attack with brutal weapon, you roll with 1 boon. The incredible thews, it says when you make an arm attack, you roll with 1 boon, which means you get the brutal strikes on top of that. So you get 2 boons there. And then you get overpowering strikes when you get a critical success on the melee attack roll against a target. They make a strength roll, and on the failure, they get knocked prone or pushed. So that sort of goes in well with the fact that pushing is one of my favorite things to do in combat, because you just push them over a ledge. And then at level 5, you get improved brutal strikes. So when you get a critical success on an attack made with a brutal weapon, the target makes a luck roll. On a failure, they become vulnerable to the end of your next turn. And then Wrath of the Woodwoes, you can use this talent when you are harmed. A minute, you roll to attack for boon, and your attacks deal an extra 1d6 damage. So all of these features that come with the Woodwoes as your novice path is just all about beating the shit out of people, like using your body, slamming. So I can imagine using his horns for his unarmed attack. Since, I mean, there's really nothing that's not going to let you use your horns. Like, slam his horns, which is very fitting for a Minotaur. Slam shoulder, slam chest, slam, whatever. And it's like he doesn't have full control over his body yet. So just sort of throwing himself and being very good at throwing himself, I think is very fitting for his novice path, while he is just a little explorer, a little spelunker.
And now we'll go through our expert paths. For my expert path, I was eyeing the wizard hard. Because book, and because more spells. But being a dungeon master and weaving the Shadows Fall stories, Bard kept calling to me. The Bard training of playing any instrument is cool, but stretching it for me. I dabbled in many instruments in my IRL early years in the garage band, and play a few tunes, but never mastered any instrument. But this is fantasy, so hell yeah, I'll take it. And the legends and lore talent is perfect for a storyteller flavor. At level 4, I gain a new tradition. Now, I never saw myself as a fire mage. This all changed when I streamed an indie game named Hand of Doom, where you play a wizard who gains and casts incantation using hand signs and strung together words of power. You can learn the Fireball incantation, which uses the metal horn's hand sign, as well as the words Ort, Ort. Thanks to my chat, specifically Lennon Burrows, this became a signature phrase and spell for Nim. So level 4 I learned the pyromancy tradition, but I don't gain the expert spells until 5th level and 6th. Of course, for both of those levels I chose Fireball, so I can Ort, Ort. How about you, Obe?
I love that. For Oblivion, looking through the several expert paths, I in the end decided to settle on Sorcerer. Different from the more popular vision of what a sorcerer is in other systems, Shadow of the Weird Wizard has a different approach. Instead, making them conjurers of evil spirits they call upon for knowledge or greater power. In this case, I decided that everything to do with the conjurer evil spirit ritual would be a call upon the unknown for whatever Oblivion would need. This path focuses on that ability and empowering the caster with both boons and sacrifices, which are perfect to reflavor into the dangers that serving the unknown entail at times for both the caster and their enemies, that is. For the tradition I chose Psychomancy again and selected thematic spells from both the traditions I have, with the last one being a version of Nim powered by the unknown, which is something that you can do in this system. Do you want more talents from the same tradition? Just pick the same tradition again. This version of Oblivion is essentially how they look now. I recreated them the best I could, and of course featuring Nim this time. Now, I haven't mentioned the sword yet that you can see in both of the images, but we'll get to it soon. So, Ruby, why don't you tell us about your expert path?
So, my expert path comes with a little story. About a year or two back, felt like I wanted to have a companion for Ruby. And I never was sure what I wanted, but when I read the comic Crow's Nest by Voidless, I fell in love with these little piggies with rocks on their backs. And Ruby is all about having a team on her side. It's hard for her to be alone. So this one is very straightforward. The Boulder Bow Rocky joins Ruby, and she gets the Beast Friend path. I didn't even need to reflavor anything here. It is simply the better version of a Beastmaster Ranger, because the companion has its own turn, and it evolves throughout the path. This is basically what you can see here, Ruby in the middle of her adventurer career, replacing the wooden sword with a big hammer, and she also gains like a little bit more of a bigger armor there. And for the Beast Friend, the bonded Beast Companion, you gain the service of a magical quadruple beast, one lacking the fly and swimmer traits. So it's perfect for Rocky. The creature is your companion, and you can communicate telepathically while you are within 100 miles of each other. I don't know what these freedom units are, but it's a lot. If your beast companion dies, its spirit enters your body, where it remains for 24 hours, at which point the companion reincarnates into a new body. So basically, you will never lose your beast companion, unlike in other systems. While your body contains the companion spirit, you have a bonus to health equal to your level, and the keen vision trait, so it all comes back. At 4th level, while your companion spirit is in your body, your melee weapon attacks deal an extra 1d6 damage or 2d6 damage at level 6. If you die, the companion spends the next hour eating your remains and disappears when it finishes. If you are inedible, both you and the companion disappear. I think that's freaking great, actually. Like, all of this. I love the flavor of the beast friend, and it doesn't give me any spells, but this is perfectly perfect. Like, really, really cool way of doing a beast companion there. Anyway, let's move on to the expert path of Raynor.
So the expert path I've chosen for Raynor is the psychic. So I imagine by this point in his story, if this was a story, it would be when he had discovered the labyrinth for the first time, and he met the mechanism, who in the original D&D version of this character was his warlock patron. So in the story, she would have been helping him unlock the potential of his eldritch form, while also technologically assisting him. So with this path, the psychic, he gains a spell tradition and some spells. So I had him take the technomancy tradition, flavor it more so that these things he's getting from the mechanism than they are actually like him casting the spells himself, because he's not intelligent enough to know anything about making anything. So he's just is a sugar baby getting all of this from the mechanism. So he gets the ultimate tool as his talent, which he uses as his weapon, turning it into whatever kind of weapon fits the situation. Because I love in a character they can just use whatever weapon. I hate having to. But I prefer being able to switch weapons of a character than have them use the same weapon, and it could get boring. And the first spells he get are the Flitter Blade and the Gizmo spells, which are 2 expert spells. The Gizmo, basically, he gets every novice spell, which is cool, in some sort of technological way, some sort of gadget, some sort of gizmo of this spell. And I also like to imagine the Flitter Blades being sort of like the Green Goblin's razor bats in Spider-Man. And he eventually gets the I Spy spell, a little drone you can send out to spy for him. The Mechanical Lackey, a little robot which fights alongside him, which I imagine this being the mechanism itself, having some sort of robot or hard light projection drone. And then much later on, when he gets his master spells, he gets the Radiant Blade, basically a lightsaber. And it actually pairs very nicely with one of his Woodwose features because of the Radiant Blade having the brutal property. So he doesn't end up like wasting his Woodwose features when he gets the Radiant Blade. At this point, I had like an extra master spell, and it's like I should get something for him. Might as well get him the tank. The Rolling Fortress, which is just an actual tank, and it's not just a tank, it's a huge tank. So I imagine it's 10 units across. Dude, it's huge. I would imagine his Rolling Fortress is just the chess rook. Like, it is just straight up the rook from chess. Real life size. Little castle that moves around. And then the actual features he gets from his path, his psychic path, may I remind you, is telekinetic skills, such as the ability to do a telekinetic slam, and also the ability to give you a really, really bad headache with Thorrend. As he levels up in this path, he gets Mental Fortress, which protects him from all kinds of mental attacks, giving Bane's attacks against his mental faculties, which I imagine as being something that's like he's been taught by the mechanism, sort of unlocking the potential of his eldritch abilities. And at level 6 he gets Speed of Thought, which lets him go super speed whenever he takes the initiative. So whenever he takes the initiative, he is going 5 yards extra every time. So I think he has 5 or 6 yards as a Woodwose, so he'll be going 10 yards in combat whenever he takes the initiative, which is fast as fuck. And I imagine this with Speed of Thought, because it's like, okay, Speed of Thought, that's a pretty cool name. Pretty cool name, makes sense. And the only way I can imagine it working is he's like telekinetically throwing himself like through combat. And then at a much higher level, he gets psychic effort, which lets him use his int or will in place of any strength or agility rolls and add 10 to it, which is pretty cool. Lets him make up for his dex, although he's pretty strong already. And yeah, that is his expert path.
And now let us move on to our OC's Master Paths. So, for Maliverox Nim, my Master Path. With great knowledge comes great responsibility. With my roots in the Demon Lord system, and the world on the brink of apocalypse from the shadow, I thought it would be fitting to not only tell the tales of doom. With the Demonologist path, now I too join the fight, becoming a demon hunter and slayer alongside of those I once wrote about. I chose the symbolism tradition to gain spells that would aid my allies as well as flavorful options to face my demonic foes. With my progression, I only gain one master spell, and I chose the Obsidian Gate spell from Shadowmancy. I love the flavor, but it only allows you to teleport on the same world. With the Sage's permission, and possibly story reasons, this would be my spell for traversing the worlds to warn and fight against the shadow. Also, you have to make a luck roll, and if you fail, you disappear, never to be seen again. I think it would be cool if I had failed one time, but in this disappearance I meet an eldritch oblivion who saves me and nullifies the failure aspect of the spell, for a price, of course. Speaking of Eldritch Oblivion, Obi, tell us about your Master Path.
Oh my god, I can't believe I am hearing your story, that's so cool. So, for the Master Path, more for the fun of it than a more thoughtful decision, I chose the Oblivionist as the expert path. Eldritch Tradition Oblivionist does not exist and can hurt you. Or can they? Here's where their sword comes to play. It's a manifestation of Oblivion's mind to aid in self-defense. After serving the unknown for so long, they are granted a final boon to empower them and help defend the archives from any external threats, no longer needing more magic than they already have. As I mentioned before, I chose this path to have a chuckle, but it actually is very fitting for this character. The unknown's more powerful aspect is that of the void and shadow, so it makes a lot of sense that the more prevalent force would be the final influence for building this character. So yes, the final conclusion to all of this, I would say I really want to play this character and play it alongside all of you. But not just that, I also like that it actually inspired me to flesh Oblivion out more by the wide amount of selections that I could have gone for. And also the fact that I never thought of Oblivion to be someone who could fight, more of a passive entity more than anything else. So giving them something a little bit more badass is actually a little bit more empowering and fun than just having them nerding out about and just floating around and drowning in knowledge and doing nothing else. You know, perhaps adventuring with friends from time to time, perhaps using a body so they do not actually have to leave the archives and just using some sort of avatar or representation of themselves, empowered by the unknown, would make everything, all of this progression and all of this getting more and more powerful as the adventure continues, make much more sense in a story context, because having Oblivion being the maximum level within the archives, and then just lending that power very slowly through the unknown into an avatar would be a lot of fun in the long run as a storytelling element. So yeah, that's all from me. So Ruby, tell us about your final steps.
The master level. When Ruby becomes the Forger of Heroes, the one that she was meant to be. For this, I chose the Summoner path, which is perfect to represent the time Ruby becomes a full-fledged Hero Forger, because it summons heroes at her side. Also learning the War tradition to represent the pact with the magical forge, so she could wield this enormous rocket hammer that you see. And this is inspired a little bit of the Hexblade Warlock, where the forge is the patron, basically. In Vanilla Weird Wizard, the summoner gets to summon a monster, which counts as an ally. But I like to reflavor this one as a armored knight that fights along the side of Ruby. Later, she also learns to manifest the fire and summons a fire elemental. And at the very last level, the knight gains a new form, making it a fearsome monster, which you can see here. And the monster also regenerates 1d6 health each turn, or heals damage, actually, in that case. So that actually makes a full adventure group with 4 units on the battlefield. And yeah, the whole thing about her becoming a Forger of Heroes is inspired by me using Hero Forge and making many models, and I think I found my calling in that, and having that to represent in my character is actually very nice. And it goes less of like, I had my adventure, I maybe do some more adventures, but usually I make other creatures for them to have adventures. So it all came like kind of like full circles at that point. So yeah, that's my master path. Rainer, tell us more about yours.
So when Rainer gets to his master path, I imagine by this point he is under the guidance of the mechanism. He's getting more and more control over his body, getting close to his full control and full control by level 10. Letting him like have transform his tentacles and shift in ways any way he sees fit for whatever situation. He gets access to another tradition, alteration, which I see as, in the case of my character, just more like additional kinds of ways that he can change his body. Although with the unnerving mask talent, where you can use a reaction to make yourself hideous to potentially push back and frighten an enemy after they attack you, I imagine he instead uses it just to flinch on him. You know, just give him a ha! You know, just give him a ha! Just scare him off a little bit. And I gave him the change size spell so he can look huge. And the greater healing spell, because everybody needs a bit of healing, but mostly him. From the path itself, he gets the ability to change between having one of a few traits, such as increasing strength or dex, increasing health, getting better senses, getting the ability to climb or fly or disguise his appearance. He then later on gets beast form, an ability where he can transform into a special form where he's tankier, faster, has a better sense of smell, and has claws and sharp teeth. I imagine it kind of goes animal, full bull, hunching over, running on all fours while pulling bits of the ground out as he runs with his claws. His horns are long and sharp. Full animal. And then at level 10, he gets ideal form. This is where he has complete control over his physical form. With like 2 boons on his strength and agility rolls, everybody gets banes when it comes to harming him, and he heals naturally at the end of every round unless he's injured. At this point, if you include everything he gets from this, as well as all of his spells, especially the Radiant Blade, he just kind of ends up becoming Star Wars Venom at the end, which is peak character design, I think.
I freaking love all your characters.
Same here.
Yeah, I love everybody so much. I really like how you all have flavored your own things. The one that I was the most intrigued about was Rainer's, because aside from the Woodwoods, there's nothing really that close to what you are. And the way that you flavored it was so freaking good. And dude, he looks huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
I would love to see like if we could like get a little campaign going with these characters. Like I would love to see like the justification. I mean, you already mentioned with Oblivion that you had like basically an avatar and like lending them power and stuff. I would love to see like how we would all like go from level 1 to level 10 with these characters. I think it would be very, very fun. Especially with Mali's narration if he ends up running it.
If Mali runs it, then who will play Mali?
Mali.
The NPC.
The NPC.
No, I don't
Yes.
like that. No.
Yes. No. Yes. Do it.
No, DMPCs. I've run DMPCs and I think it takes away a bit from gameplay.
But we are all gaming.
We all have the DM then.
Hey, if you are watching this and you are a good DM with lots of narration experience and stuff, hit us up.
Please.
We would love to play with you and we want to play these characters. Even better, if you're also knowledgeable on Show the Web Wizard, or if you want to learn a new system with 4 willing players to be thrown into you just like that. Yeah, this is a call for help.
Hey, maybe Schwalb could DM for us.
Bold statement.
Right?
If only Schwab was here.
Right?
Yeah, I'm so sad he left.
Okay. I do have a question for all of you, actually, for your characters, because that's something I haven't mentioned myself. Have you homebrewed any kind of items your character would have? Any magical artifacts or something that you would have in your master path or expert path or something?
I don't need to because the gizmo exists.
What about you, Mali?
I mean, that badass sword that you made me in the master path, I was just going to make it like a sword of demon slaying, you know, boons against demons, banes against me. And then when you were mentioning magic items off the record, I came up with a perfect one for future spoiler stuff, but I don't know if I wrote it down and I can't find it anywhere, and now I'm so mad at myself because I lost it. Damn it.
What about you, Oblivion?
Dan, maybe I made you forget on accident. I'm so sorry. Anyway, for me, I actually did not think of any of that. But the thing that I did think about was that the sword that I was talking about, like the one that is floating around, Obi uses their telekinetic powers to wield. I was thinking of having just like the same looks every time, but if there was an adventure and they would get new things, I would flavor it in a way that it is their sword that gets those attributes as opposed to getting new weapons. Or if they got new weapons that they would assimilate into that. Kind of like what you would do with Pact of the Blade Warlock from D&D. But making it so it has a concept like that, but also different kind of flavor, because I absolutely love flavor. Abilities wise and everything, perhaps I would choose things that would go a lot with the forgetting part of the unknown and erasing memories, because after all, like I mentioned in the Oblivionist part of things, that final version of the sword will be empowered by that aspect of the unknown. So I would say that it would progressively get an effect or an ability that I can activate to do some sort of psychic damage or psychic effect that would be thematic of that, and it would progress all the way to master. Apprentice, Harpoon, Steven Seagal.
Nice. What about you, Ruby? Did you create any magic items for your character?
Yes, I did. Some of them, which come basically from the book, like Superior Enchanted Plate and Mail, which basically gives a +1 to your defense. But also some fun stuff, like, of course, my Rocket Hammer, which is an enchanted rocket hammer, which also gives a +1 boon to attacks, but also has the Thrown 5 and Returning trait. So I can throw the rocket hammer around and it returns to me. Another fun thing that I thought of, because it was in my lore, is the Rift Blade, which lets me basically teleport around or open up gates to other worlds. So it also has the Fast Step talent, the Rift Blade, and the Gate spell. So I can use that once a day. Oh, and the Rocket Hammer also has the ability to turn into a bolt turret. So yeah, I can basically throw away my hammer and it turns into like some kind of turret and like is on the battlefield then. Maximum summons.
Yeah, we need to get the 4 of our OCs and some, I guess with the Hero Forge models in like a badass pose, like saving worlds from certain doom.
Yeah, let's make a webcomic out of it.
Oh my god.
That would
Please
be
don't that would be really cool, but at the same time I want to play it. I don't want to read.
Yeah, same. I want to play it.
But I mean, as I did with the Outcasts, I would be willing to make art for that. If there was only a willing DM that would be very kind to take us in so they can indulge us playing our own VTubers. Now that would be fun.
Honestly, I would even pay for it.
I'm sorry.
So really, this has all just been a long-ass advertisement for please DM us.
This is a call for help. Blink twice if you need help. We cannot blink. We are PNGs, except Mali. Mali can blink twice instead, so you can tell.
Well, this has been a fun episode. I really wish we could see the Weird Wizard once more to ask a few questions. Maybe we can summon him if we chant. Hail Schwalb!
Schwab.
Hail
Hail
Schwalb!
Schwab!
Hail Schwalb! Oh shit, it worked! Welcome back, Rob.
Hey, did somebody call?
Yes, thank you. I didn't think that'd work. We just wanted to ask you a few questions before we ended, if that's okay.
For sure.
Okay. Since you were in the tradition segment, Ruby, why don't you start us off with the first question?
Yeah, actually, if you could learn one of your magic traditions in real life, like what would you choose and why?
Well, I don't know. I can narrow it down to two, but I can narrow it down to two. One is the good side of me, which is like, well, I want to take alteration because it's probably the most beneficial to myself, and then also people I know. Plus, I could eat whatever I want because I could polymorph myself into a more fit shape. But I'm also a huge animal lover, so I think I'd probably have to go with the animism spell or tradition, just so I could talk directly to my cats and be the druid that I am in real life.
That's so wholesome. I love it.
Is it?
Yes.
I love it too. I would love to know what my cats want to say to me.
Yeah, I'm afraid that there's probably nothing good, but it's at least I'd know, right?
Exactly. Still on magic, Rainer, why don't you ask the next question?
All right. So I noticed many TTRPGs use concentration as a way of limiting how many powerful spells one can be taken advantage of at a time, such as D&D, Pathfinder, and even your previous game, Shadow of the Demon Lord. However, in Weird Wizard, I noticed I don't think there's any concentration mechanics, so a caster could have as many spells as long as the spells' durations, the castings of those spells, and the action economy will allow them to cast, making casters like very, very powerful in the system compared to others. So, what was the idea behind not having concentration in this system?
Well, I didn't want the extra layer of complexity. There is some interesting narrative fodder in the idea that you're concentrating a spell and someone damages you and you lose access to the spell. But when you balance the spell to do what it's supposed to do, ending it early is just a feel bad. So I wanted to get rid of that aspect. And as far as control goes, and as far as stacking effects, one of the ways that I manage this is to manage to avoid, creating these multi-layered magical monstrosities, is to shunt all the effects that you might want to layer on top of each other into one spell, or keep their durations limited so that they're 1 minute long, so that even if you do stack 2 or 3 spells, the combat's probably over before you have a chance to realize the effects of having so many different spells cast on top of each other. And the game does have kind of a secret. I'm pretty sure it does. At least if it doesn't yet, there should be examples of spells that do require you to, the spell might last, but then you use an action while the spell is ongoing to do something the spell can do. So for example, you cast a spell, you produce the effect, and then for 1 minute, you can use an action to do that effect again. So it's like using an action to concentrate on it, because the spell goes into dormancy until you invest another action to produce that effect again. So it was just one of those, it was another way of kind of stripping away some of the complications that make spell casting less fun.
Yeah, it's like one thing is like in other systems like D&D, if you want to do conjuration, you want to be conjurer, you can really have like one guy out at a time, or maybe like a spell that gives you like little guys. But Ruby created a character in Weird Wizard who could summon, I think, like between 20 and 30 guys and have them all out at once, I think.
That sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sound like fun.
I think that it's one of those kind of self-correcting things, that having 20, 30 guys out at once is a lot of fun and it feels cool once, but then once you start to have to keep track of all those guys, you might self-correct eventually, that you don't have to worry about keeping track of all that. And then not every situation is going to be one that you're going to need that many bodies out there, right?
Right. It's
Absolutely.
just fun to do.
I also like that the system in general gives a lot of players agency and more control over what they want, and focuses a lot on the fun. And I really appreciate that about Shadow of the Weird Wizard.
Awesome, because that is really that has been every decision that goes in the game is to try to get rid of the stuff that feels like it has to be there, and just delivering the effect that the players are aiming for.
Would you like to go next, Obi, or should I?
Oh, yeah, I will go next. What was your thought process when building the initiative like you did, and what was the decision behind swapping the order that you had in Shadow of the Demon Lord?
The origins of the initiative system go back to when I was working on a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing, when I was still working for Green Renine Publishing. And when the game came out, somebody in RPGNet had some snide comment about how humdrum, boring the initiative system was for that game. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, granted, this is almost 15 years ago. At the time I was miffed, but then I started thinking about it. It was like, well, what really is initiative doing for you? It's that. And then when we were working on 5th edition D&D, I really started thinking about initiative and how much of a pain in the ass it is in gameplay, because it causes this I don't know, you go from narrative mode to tactical mode, and you have this formal kind of transition phase where you have to sort everything in. So you kind of, all the excitement about you busting down the door and facing a demon goes on hold as everyone has to roll initiative and put everything in order. And so I wanted to have it more free-flowy and be able to seamlessly transition from story mode to gameplay mode. And that's where Shadow of the Demon Lord's initiative system came in. And, when I introduced it to the players, my playtest groups, they freaked out. They didn't know what to do with it, and they really hated it until they played their first combat with it. And then once that happened, they were sold. And then, of course, it became, I think, one of the most exciting parts about Demon Lord and Demon Lord Engine games. So Weird Wizard is an iteration on the original mechanic where we had fast turns, slow turns, and end of the round. I wanted to streamline that even more, and I wanted the players to have to do something in order to get that advantage over the monsters. So using a reaction to pay the price of being able to go before the monsters does make sense, because you're going before rather than waiting. If you wait and the monster moves and you can make a free attack, or the monster attacks you can dodge, that's kind of it becomes an interesting choice for you as a player. Decide, well, I can maybe take this monster out on this first hit, or I can go back in a more defensive mode and then react to it in a way that will preserve myself. And so every round you have to make that choice about, do I want to go now, or do I want to protect myself? And so I think that's an interesting kind of development for the way for gameplay. It also cuts down on the phases, right? I mean, it's just like there's only, right, who wants to take the initiative? Monsters go, then players go, and we wrap, then we do upkeep, and we do it again. So it simplifies a little bit as well.
Yeah, I can see it simplifies things better, and at the same time, it adds a little bit of that thrill of, okay, should I sacrifice that reaction now, or if there's any point in the combat where there's these high stakes, there's several people down, which is a situation that Mali and I had pretty recently, where you have to choose between, okay, do I want to save this reaction, or do I want to act now with the hope of bringing this threat down? And I think that really, really gives combat a kind of thrill that it usually doesn't have when there's the initiative where just like, yeah, you go first. And I think it really is an improvement on in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like compared to other games I've played, like D&D, where it's, everyone has the set order they go in, it feels less active. You're less actively engaged. You know what you want to do in your turn, and maybe if somebody trips your reactive, but then this ends up being waiting for your turn. While in this initiative, it feels a bit more active. It's like, yeah, I think I should go now, and you end up being more engaged with the gameplay.
Yeah, I found that too. That there's people don't check out in between turns, and they seem to be more focused on the action at hand. That is definitely borne out in my demos and personal games for sure.
Yeah, because after all, you have to weight your options. You don't. You have to be active the entire time to see what you have to do next.
Yeah.
I love it. A small story too. Ruby was running a game of Weird Wizard, and we were fighting some bad guys, and I took a shot at the end of the round. And I was like, I'm going to go first again and take another shot with my Mark IV pistol. I can take out this guy. And of course, Ruby had ads that came out of the cornfield, and I was like, fuck, I need my shimmering shield.
Yep.
I love it. All right, the final question I will give you. I know Shadow of the Weird Wizard is about the plight of humanity and such, but you wrote a most excellent supplement that adds 30 ancestries to choose from. Which is your favorite ancestry, and what inspired the lore and talents?
Tatterdemalion is my favorite. I love the idea of playing a ghost who lives inside of clothing. The idea comes from my sometimes cartographer, Cecil Howe. He was working on a game called The Forest Hymn and Picnic, and one of the character concepts was a ghost that also had clothing that they would get. And I just I started to develop that idea further and for this game. And considering the cosmology of the settings cosmology of going to the underworld, which is giving yourself an anchor to stick around, seems interesting. And I think it's a different kind of character to play. It just feels more flavorful than the typical assortment of Tolkien races. So Tattermalion is my favorite.
Nice. I covered that one earlier in the episode. I do love Tatterdemalions as well. I've used one as an NPC in one of my games, and just the imagery and the flavor and figuring out how to role play them is really, really fun. I love them.
Cool.
Well, I think that about wraps up our discussion in Dungeon. Thank you again to our guest, Robert J. Schwalb.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Agreed. I had a smile on my face the whole time talking about this system.
Always happy to talk about Weird Wizard. I love it.
Hell yeah. Any parting words?
I will tell you that we still have a ton of game supplements, quests coming out for Weird Wizard. We've got the Rage of the Goblin King campaign. That is, I think I just wrapped up the 4th chapter on that yesterday. So that's moving along, and then we're going to start seeing the Jungle of Za and more gods from the Mystery of the Old Gods. So there's just a bunch of really neat things coming out for it. So stay tuned.
One more question, actually. You don't have to answer this, but how the fuck do you do it, Schwab?
I don't even know anymore. I had been doing pretty well until we rescued 5 cats, 4 kittens and their mom, and then brought them into the house, and that brought our cat count to some obnoxious number that I can't even say without feeling shame. So then we've got a geriatric cat. She's 22 years old, and so I have to keep an eye on her. And so all these plates spinning. So I get to work about 20 to 40 minutes a day. So I don't know how I'm able to keep up. Somehow I'm doing it, but I have a feeling that it has a lot to do with self-loathing and fear.
Oh, damn. Hey, from one cat dad to another. Keep it up. The kitties deserve it.
Oh yeah, they do.
That is incredibly wholesome, and I'm very grateful to know that you are a fellow cat dad. That's great.
Yeah, they are everything to me. As annoying and irritating as they can be. Yeah.
Same. Thanks again, Rob, for joining us for this discussion in Dungeon. You can find links to Schwab Entertainment, as well as the Drive-Thru RPG link to the Shadow of the Weird Wizard core book in the description below. And thank you again to my co-host. That was a great episode. Catch us next time for episode 4 of Discussion in Dungeon. Now don't leave me hanging, co-host. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.